It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We thank you for being with us on this Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. It's the day after the day when voting began in the 2024 election cycle. We will discuss on this edition of The Drive. It is my episode 492, and my name is not Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson is on the road back from Iowa way. He will check in with us right around 3:35 this afternoon. My name is Matt Murphy. You normally hear me from noon until 3 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you to Pamela Furr for jumping in here and filling in for me. I am pleased and proud to fill in for Brian Wilson this afternoon from 3 until 7 o'clock, or they pull me off the radio, whichever comes first. You're invited to be a part of the show. I know Brian oftentimes will dedicate segments to telephone callers. I'm kind of freeform in that regard, so if you have any issue that you wish to discuss, and most particularly if you want to talk about the election from last evening, the caucus last evening, we have open phones available for you at 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. I mentioned that Brian Wilson will be with us at about 3:35 this afternoon. We'll have Dan Thomas from WSMV Channel 4 at 5:35, maybe before. If he has a moment, he might check in with us in the 3 o'clock hour. But we're going to find out from Dan what we can expect over the next couple of days with regard to two things. One, melting, and two, more snow. There is expected to be very little melting and more snow. I'll get into that in just a moment as we get the show lumbering under its own weight. Mac Morey's back in the newsroom. He's gathering headlines as we speak, generally speaking, making us aware of everything going on in our world. And, of course, behind the glass, making sure that everything that comes out of our speaker sounds as good as humanly possible, the one and only Chris Webb. Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Go Dogs. I like that hat.
Thank you.
That's nice.
Yeah.
You see, we got a new co-defensive coordinator.
Yeah, familiar name.
As I immediately revert to football talk. By the way, speaking of football talk, we're going to get a breakdown of the first round of the playoffs during the Mac Morey's Wide World of Sports this afternoon.
Yeah.
Or what's the story? Is
Yes,
that what we're doing?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. We'll
everybody make it. Everybody make it through the big snow. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So far, so good.
Yeah. So far, so good.
Yeah.
Unharmed. Warm.
Enjoying it. How old is Copper?
She is. It's my dog for the listeners wondering. She is 4 years old, or turning 4 this year.
So she's had snow before.
Yeah, well, she's from Wyoming. Her whole first year of her life before I
wow.
got her was outside. She was a farm dog, so not trained farm dog, but she was there. She wasn't actually doing the cattle stuff. She's a red heeler, but yeah, so she loves it. Yeah, Hannah's been sending me videos all day today because she's home, just them outside running around. So
That's pretty good.
yeah, it's her favorite time.
Mrs. Beasley sank up to her chinny chin in a couple of places. It was pretty good.
That's great.
It's pretty good. And Munson's like a bulldozer through the snow. Munson is for those who've never heard me talk about Larry Munson, he is a dwarf Great Pyrenees.
Okay.
All right, so we did DNA testing on him. We thought he was some version of a corgi. Corgi,
Yeah.
am I saying that right? Yeah, corgi, like the Queen used to have. And he was not. He, turns out, was Great Pyrenees and some sort of shepherd mix, but he's a dwarf.
It's like a jumbo shrimp. Kind of one of those things,
well,
right?
And if you see pictures of him, and you can find them on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, I posted some pictures of him in the snow. You'll see it. I mean, he's got little bitty short legs and a big stocky body, but man, going through the snow, he's like one of those snow plows. He just right on through it, just bulldoze his way through it. And then when we had a, and you dog owners will understand this. You non-dog owners, just bear with me for a second. We had one of the poops where it just goes straight out and then you watch it go, boop. You know what I'm saying? Where it it right out onto the snow and then you just, there it goes, disappears right through the snow. I'll find that with my foot later. Isn't that nice?
Very
That's
nice.
great. That's great. Anybody make snow snow ice cream?
No.
Does anyone know what snow ice cream is?
Yes.
I've heard of that, but I've never made it.
Been years.
We haven't done it yet, but I kind of wanted some. My grandmother used to make it. I mean, on the rare occasion that we would get snow in Thompson, Georgia, my grandmother would make snow ice cream with vanilla, condensed milk, sugar, and ice cream. You could pretty much do it without the ice cream, and it would be delicious.
Mm-hmm.
But with the ice cream, it's like a big snow cone, only with vanilla flavoring. It's really good, really good. So
you got to make sure you get the fresh stuff, though.
Oh yeah, nothing on the surface layer. No No yellow snow.
No.
Watch out for the little baby Ruths in the snow, especially if you're getting it from my house. Anyway, hope everybody's having a good time with the snow, doing all the sledding and whatnot. We'll keep you up to date with roadway conditions throughout the course of the afternoon. There's no expectation that a lot of this is getting off the roads. I was out and about today. I was coming from Mount Juliet into town, and I got to tell you, the roads look pretty good, although there are icy patches. You have to be aware of that. Just stay calm and, for goodness sake, slow down. What I noticed, and I don't understand what it is about the human condition that we do this, some of us, but why do you feel like in the aftermath of a snowstorm in Nashville, Tennessee, that you feel compelled to go 90 miles an hour down the highway, a highway that has icy patches all over it and in some spots is covered still with snow? I don't understand why you do it, but you do it. And what you do is you make me wish that you would hit the guardrail. I don't really wish it. I wish it for a second. Okay, I kind of really wish it. I don't want anybody to get hurt, but I wouldn't mind it if you damaged that little two-wheel sports car of yours to help you understand that you need to go slower when conditions are such that that might make it dangerous to travel. Jack Womack's back in the traffic center, by the way, and he'll keep you updated with roadway conditions as well. But if you see something, say something, as the case may be. So you're invited to contribute on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. I have that up and running in the studio. I also have your telephone calls raring to go at any point that you want to make them, 615-737-9986. There are international events that we have to get to on the show today that are making zero headlines. And they're making zero headlines for good reason, because the mainstream media, absent Newsmax and to a certain degree Fox News, although I put Fox News in a slightly different category than I once did, in the absence of those two media organizations reporting on this, you will not see or hear about this on CBS, NBC, ABC, #NeverCNN, none of these alphabet soup networks, because they're in the bag for Joe Biden. And Joe Biden has created a dynamic by which we might see a major escalation in world war in the Middle East in the next several months. And it's happening right now. Iran has been engaged in a proxy campaign against the United States of America in the Middle East since October 7th. Now, they're doing it themselves. The Iranians attacked a United States consulate last night. Now, luckily, they're bad at what they do, and they missed. They attacked a United States consulate last night. And you're not seeing this on the mainstream news. Why? In the meantime, the Secretary of Defense just got released from the hospital, and they can claim all they want that he is engaged while in the hospital, and I don't believe it for a moment. And you might think to yourself, well, Murphy, the Secretary of Defense answers to the Commander-in-Chief, and the Commander-in-Chief is on top of these things. Wait a minute, is the Commander-in-Chief still Joe Biden? Because if that's the case, he's not on top of anything. Joe Biden has a 2024 campaign to manage. He has a disaster at the southern border, an absolute humanitarian disaster at the southern border, regardless of your politics. He has a crisis at the Red Sea that will create a dynamic by which your energy prices are about to go up. You know that, right? Even without the Iranians attacking the United States consulate, because the Houthis continue to attack U.S. container ships and other container ships in the Red Sea, organizations are now making the decision not to go that way to get to the Atlantic Ocean. So they're not trying to get to the Mediterranean Sea. Guess what that means, friends? They have to go an extra 6,000 miles around Africa. You think that's going to cause your oil prices and your gasoline prices to go up a little bit? Yeah. Shell Corporation just announced that they're no longer going through the Red Sea for the foreseeable future because of a lack of stability there. Why? Because of a lack of stability more broadly in the Middle East. Why? Because of a lack of leadership in the White House. And in the meantime, the president of the United States. Let me do this with Chris, because Chris is one of the smartest, Bell K notwithstanding, one of the smartest producers that I've ever met. You want to take a stab at when Joe Biden called a lid today?
10:30.
9 o'clock.
Good grief.
You went intentionally low, and you didn't go low enough.
Yep.
It was announced at 9 o'clock this morning that there would be no public events and nothing on the presidential schedule for the remainder of the day. What? Are you? I mean, folks, the emperor has no clothes. This man is not functioning as president of the United States, because I assure you, the United States was under attack last night. Thank God it was not a more broad-based assault by the Iranians against this president. But I could go back even further as to how all of this escalated and how all of it happened. It started when Joe Biden became president of the United States, took the terrorist designation off of the Houthi people, gave Iran their money back, or released some of the money for the Iranians to then begin the funding mechanisms by which all of the rest of this nonsense is actually happening, to include Hamas attacking Israel, to include the Houthis attacking us, Hezbollah in Jordan and the surrounding areas, and now the Iranians are attacking us directly right under our nose, and the president has nothing to say about it and obviously isn't doing anything on it. The Secretary of Defense doesn't even bother to tell him he's in the hospital with prostate cancer. Who's running the show? Because someone's making decisions, either what to do or what not to do in this case. Who is it? Is it Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor? Is it Susan Rice? Is it Barack Obama? Is it George? I don't know who it is. And neither do you. Neither do you. And that should scare the hell out of all of us. If the mainstream media, who refused to report on this story, if they actually cared about the future of the United States of America, and similarly, if they cared to actually learn what the popularity of Donald J. Trump is, they would look at this story in the Middle East. The people of the United States want stability, and we want leadership. And yes, that leadership might at some times become abrasive. But if you think about it, every strong Republican leader that has existed in the last 60 years has been called crazy by the mainstream press. This just is exponential because Donald Trump is giving back more than he actually gets from them. Ronald Reagan was unfit for duty. George W. Bush was called crazy, a cowboy, if you will, for his foreign policy initiatives. And now, here you have Donald Trump. Joe Biden is missing in action, and the world is suffering as a result. We're going to break down Iowa coming up in just a moment. We'll talk to Brian Wilson, get his thoughts on said state. Yes, it's a done deal. And I understand perhaps why Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley don't want to accept that outcome as of yet. But last evening was absolutely historic. We're going to break down some of the numbers for you. We'll talk about Vivek Ramaswamy stepping down as a presidential contender, quote unquote, suspending his presidential campaign and immediately endorsing Donald Trump. Matter of fact, he is campaigning with Donald Trump tonight in New Hampshire. Vivek Ramaswamy was smart, as predicted by me on social media, and understand where the tea leaves show this is going. We'll break it all down for you in just a moment. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson on The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
The TVA asking for help. They're asking people to limit their use of any non-essential appliances as temperatures are going to continue to stay dangerously cold, and we follow the legal battle over whether former President Trump should appear on the 2024 primary ballot. 3:30. Stay tuned. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hold on a second, Maury. I thought we had all of that handled. TVA said we're all good this time around.
Yeah, that's what
You
they
got the
said.
bad news, huh? So Mac Maury's back in the news closet. Chris Webber is behind the glass, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as possible. And there's me, Matt Murphy. I'm in studio. I'm not in, although I started to go to Watertown for the drive with Brian Wilson, but I decided against it. I did come in studio, and lucky for you, Mac Maury, and Chris Webber may be lucky for you, but that's all dependent on whether or not Mac Maury wants to share. Because here's what happened. Here's what happened. All right, if you're watching on Super Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, F&M Beg chat line up and running. See these right here?
Ooh, I know what those are.
Oh, wow.
You know what these are?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Those are Rolos.
Those are Rolos. They're little mini Rolos. Mm-hmm. And my wife sent me off to school today with a bag full of Rolos. And she told me, one of the last things she told me before I left the house was, would you please? She actually did this yesterday, which you weren't here yesterday. So I'm wondering whether or not that means that you abdicate the throne, if you will, of the Rolo.
You forfeit them.
You forfeit the Rolos.
Yeah.
So I was asked to give you these Rolos, Mac Maury. You specifically.
Aw, Erica's the best.
Why were you given these Rolos?
Because I'm such a cutie. I don't know.
That is not. That is
that what she said?
That is the incorrect answer. That is not the correct answer.
Thank
Chris
goodness.
Webber, why would Mac Maury be given these Rolos?
Because they're golden red.
Because they're red and gold.
Yeah, I love it.
They're red and gold. So these are Rolos that you would have gotten had you been here yesterday, but now they're free game. Fair game.
No.
All right, those are your Rolos. So get them at your leisure.
Weber, I'll share some.
Thank you.
Aw, look at you. So cute. Pamela Farr
just-
already stole some from
He just
me.
doesn't know I was going to go in there and grab them anyway.
Congrats to your Chiefs, by
Yeah,
the
it
way.
looked good. Finally.
Yeah. We'll get into more of that in the 5 o'clock hour during the wild, wide world of sports. You guys looked really good, and the Dolphins looked, like the Dolphins look when it's under 60 degrees.
Exactly right.
How cold was it during the game?
It was like the wind chill was like negative something, but it was like 2 degrees, I think.
Did you
0
have family
degrees.
at that game?
So my brother was at that game. I stayed so I could make sure I was here for work, and the podcast is getting hot, so I didn't go, which is crazy. That's like sacrilegious for me to not go to a Chiefs playoff game. But yeah, he was sitting right next to the Chiefs bench, and actually Tua Tagovailoa in the fourth quarter heaved up a pass, and it somehow floated to my brother. He got a game ball.
What?
awesome.
He got a game ball, man.
Whoa, what?
I know. And the Kansas City Star interviewed him about it, everything.
Your brother got a game ball?
Game ball thrown by Tua.
Is this the one that I argued with down at the restaurant?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Is this Sean?
This is Sean.
Sean, I got into an argument with Sean about politics down at the
Yes,
restaurant.
you did.
So he got a Kansas City game ball.
Oh, yeah.
You get to keep those?
Yes.
See, I had no idea. This shows
That's
you what
awesome.
I know.
We were watching, and I was like, that kind of looks like Sean. You can't see anyone's face. I mean, ski goggles,
Oh, yeah,
you wrapped
right,
up.
sure.
Yeah, but I'm like, he's wearing the Tony G jersey. That's a classic jersey. My brother has that exact same jersey, 3 sizes too big, the whole thing. Yeah, it was him.
Wow.
So
That's
cool.
cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
That's all right. So how is it that they let you keep them?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't understand that.
I don't know that either. I was kind of confused. He was waiting for someone to be like, hey, but no one said anything. He just
Maybe because it was the end of the game?
It was near the end of the game, but I mean, it wasn't like the very end.
Right.
It was still like halfway through the fourth quarter or something. But yeah, and it wasn't like a kick. You see lots of balls get kicked into the stands.
Right.
But I mean, this was just Tua was running for his life and just heaved it up 1,000,000 yards. And he said it looked like it was going to land 10 feet in front of him. He said there's no physics that makes sense, but it somehow it was magic. It kept going to him, right into his hands.
And it was a Dolphins game ball then.
Yes, it was a ball that Tua threw. Yep.
Wow.
So he's trying to get Tua to sign it. He wants Mahomes to sign. He's gonna.
If I'm Tua, I tell you to go pound sand. Jerks.
Signing that crap?
Negative 80 degrees or something or another. I mean, we're playing on the surface of Venus,
Yes, exactly.
the opposite side of the sun or whatnot. Well, that's very, very
It was
cool.
awesome. Yeah, so cool for him.
That's nice. All right, so we've got news coming up in just a moment. We have Brian Wilson on his way back from Iowa. He's in the Red Radio Flyer. He's going to check in. And before I give you my take on all of the proceedings, it's his show after all. I feel like we'll get his assessment. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Donald Trump's night. The question was, how much could DeSantis and Haley take from, and to a lesser degree, Vivek Ramaswamy, how much could they take from the impact of Donald Trump's lead in that state? Donald Trump took all 99. Maybe there's one county late. There was some question as to whether one or two of these metro counties would go to Haley, specifically Haley, because Haley got a lot of Democrats crossing over and voting for her in the process. But absent maybe one late county flipping from Trump to Haley, Donald Trump swept the counties, all 99 of them, and the amount of money that has been spent attempting to dislodge Donald Trump from the number one P1 position in the Republican primary race is just all for naught. Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, I was reading this morning, spent roughly a combined $68 million in Iowa. And they won nothing. They won nothing. For their effort, Donald Trump got over 50% of the vote. Donald Trump is and will be your Republican nominee for president of the United States in 2024, my assessment. We'll get Brian Wilson's assessment. It's his show, after all, coming up at about 3:35, right after the news. And that's happening now on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
"31 minutes after the hour of 3 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Dangerously cold temperatures are persisting. Right now, 18 degrees in Nashville. Meanwhile, the state supplier of electricity, Tennessee Valley Authority, says contractors are working around the clock to protect the grid ahead of tomorrow morning when they expect demand for electricity to set a record. TVA asking to keep your thermostat set to 68 degrees and turn off or limit use of any non-essential appliances. We got a full weather forecast and a traffic report headed your way in 5 minutes. In another legal battle over whether former President Trump should appear on the 2024 primary ballot, this time in Washington state. Here's Jeff Bahola.
A group of voters in Kitsap County, Washington, argued that Mr. Trump is ineligible to serve under the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause. It's the same argument that has had mixed results in other states. But Judge Jeffrey Bassett declined to hear the case.
There are 39 counties in this state. Filing a separate action in every county could result in I don't know how many different decisions.
However, the plaintiffs filed an identical motion in Thurston County, the seat of Washington government. A judge there will hear the case later this week.
And the United States has carried out another airstrike targeting a Houthi missile facility in Yemen. According to United States Central Command, it's now the third time the U.S. has hit Houthi sites used in Red Sea attacks. Karen Travers with the latest comments on this issue from National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland Tuesday, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan called the crisis in the Red Sea one that the whole world needs to respond to, calling it a, quote, global challenge. Sullivan spoke as the U.S. announced it had carried out another airstrike targeting a Houthi missile facility in Yemen. He said the Red Sea is a vital artery of global commerce and a critical maritime choke point that is being, quote, held hostage by these Houthi attacks.
And that is the latest news, traffic, weather next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
So much to break down from last night's victory by Donald Trump in Iowa. He swept the field, getting over 50% of the vote. And last count, last map I saw, he had every county in the state, all 99 of them. To break this down on the drive with Brian Wilson, we welcome Brian Wilson. Matt Murphy in for Brian, but Brian is here on the phones as he heads back from Iowa way. Hello, Brian. How are you?
Hey, it's lovely here in Paducah, Kentucky, where the temperature is, it's like, I feel like I've hit a warm front. It's 16 degrees here. I feel like I can, I might as well just break out the shorts and put on the swimsuit. It's ready to go. No, it's been a nice drive back in here. But last night, no surprises. Donald Trump, as we all expected, did very well, got more than 50%. I think if there's a surprise for me, it's that Ron DeSantis came in second, because I sort of had seen polling data that suggested to me it might be Nikki Haley, but it wasn't. Now, as we go forward, I look at Ron DeSantis and I say, what's his pathway to victory here? And it's really hard for me to imagine a pathway to victory for Ron DeSantis. I can if every star aligned and everything fell into that perfect place, I can see where Nikki Haley could do well in New Hampshire and maybe springboard that into South Carolina, but it's a thin read for her. I mean, we saw the strength of Donald Trump last night, and it's hard to imagine that anybody's going to be able to catch him. And then I wonder, well, how long do you stay in? I think Haley and DeSantis are probably into South Carolina. Then after that, if they haven't caught fire, if something hasn't happened that helps them out, at this point it sounds like that they'll probably have to fold up camp, and we just sit around and wait for Donald Trump to run up enough delegates to get the nomination, which would be probably Super Tuesday.
Plenty of time to look back and do the coulda, woulda, shoulda game, but I feel like Ron DeSantis has played this so wrong. And I was thinking last night as I was watching Vivek Ramaswamy step down, suspend his presidential campaign, and then immediately turn his attention to Donald Trump and endorse Donald Trump. And I think he's campaigning with Trump tonight in New Hampshire, I believe.
That's what I've heard, yes. Uh-huh.
I feel as if DeSantis perhaps had played it differently. He might have had more support on his side, but moving forward, it's almost like he's damaging himself down the road at this point. To me, Brian, I don't know what your take is on it. I know that political memories can be shorter, but he has doubled down and tripled down on his anti-Trump rhetoric as he got more desperate and sunk more and more money into Iowa. And I don't know if he comes in a distant third in New Hampshire, how much longer he can sustain this, thinking even beyond the 2024 election cycle into 2028.
Yeah, at some point, I think he's got to say, well, we gave it a good run, but it's not going to happen for me. It's just going up against Trump. He's so strong in all the polling that you see, with the exception of New Hampshire, where he's still in the lead. But Nikki Haley has really put a lot of effort there, and she's a New Hampshire kind of candidate more than I think Donald Trump is. So I see her doing well. Will she catch Trump? It depends on which poll you look at and which poll you like. I don't know. It seems really tough. DeSantis, I just can't see a pathway. He's not going to really do well in New Hampshire if the polls are right. South Carolina, Trump is going to trounce, I think, both Nikki Haley and DeSantis there. So you look at it and you say, what's the pathway? Why keep spending millions of dollars? And that's the bottom line. Whether they want to go forward or not, whether they think they have a vision to go forward or not, if the money people don't see the vision, then it's going to dry up pretty quickly, and they'll be forced to sort of step aside. So the Koch brothers have put a lot of money into Nikki Haley, and she's got funding. I tell you, when you go to these events, you can tell that the campaigns that have money and those that don't. I think Ramaswamy was running around with one guy and a microphone and a little speaker and a flag, and that was the extent of it, and a bus. He had a bus, and he says he spent $30 million to compete in Iowa of his own money. And if that's true, one wonders, we need to do the division. how many hundreds of thousands of dollars did he spend for every delegate that he got? It wasn't a very cost-effective investment for him, so I understand why he got out. You would think that the others would look around and really do some deep soul-searching, but they don't seem ready to quit just yet.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the money, and I saw the graphic last night where Ron DeSantis spent $36 million in Iowa. Nikki Haley somewhere north of $30 million in Iowa.
Right,
and one wonders, at some point, like you mentioned, Brian, at some point you feel like the money people are going to say enough is enough, the writing's on the wall. And I think the message was very clear. Despite all of the negative press, despite the court suits and the lawsuits and the whatnot, the American people want their guy, 45, to have another bite at the apple to right the wrongs that they feel like Joe Biden is committing while in the White House currently. The people are speaking loud and clear. I understand that it's not a uniform voice, but it's certainly enough to send the message to D.C.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000% on that. If I have a bias in this, and I've been thinking, do you have a bias in this? I'm trying to play it up the middle and look for and do a really honest analysis of each candidate's chances. But I think I do have a bias, and it struck me that the bias that I have is, as a radio talk show host, I want it to be interesting. We all want to have something to talk about. So maybe it's me looking for a more interesting story as I look at these thin reads out there. I mean, they're the thinnest of reads for Nikki Haley. And I don't see any read at all for Ron DeSantis. Ramaswamy, I don't know what his game's going to be long term. I think he might find a place in a Trump cabinet somewhere. If Trump were to prevail. So I can see what he's doing now, but I'll tell you something. The power of Trump is formidable, and it's going to take something that we don't see on the horizon to happen for that to change. I mean, I think even if he gets convicted on any of these trials, these sham trials that are been laid up against him, even if he gets a conviction there, I don't think it hurts him. I think it helps him, and I think that he can drag it out past the election, and then what do you do if he's the sitting president? This is going to be interesting one way or the other. The other thing that I keep thinking about is the other side of the equation. And Joe Biden, I mean, every time I see him, so incredibly frail. You and I were talking the other day about how Jill now escorts him to the podium. And then the moment that he gets through speaking, she's right there by his side to escort him off so he doesn't look like a little lost puppy dog or he doesn't fall. I mean, she's there. They are so protective. How can you run a campaign like that? How can you if he does another face plant, if he takes another bad step, if he were to have, God forbid, one of those Mitch McConnell moments where he has a brain freeze, and at his age and with his medical conditions and his past history, he's had 2 aneurysms, so I don't think he's ever been the same since the aneurysms. I remember Joe Biden before the aneurysms. He was a different guy after the aneurysms. So, I mean, you look at it and you say, how can you run that campaign? I still don't believe to this day, and I don't know how it will happen. I don't know, what the scenario will be, how it plays out. But I honestly don't believe that Joe Biden will be the Democrat. I still don't believe it. I'll be shocked. But who it is, and how they engineer that and how it happens, I can't foresee it yet.
Well, 2 things, Brian, and I know time's limited, and you better watch the road there. But 2 things. One, Biden's approval rating just hit 31%, which is the lowest for a president in the last 15 years, and certainly the lowest of a presidential candidate that we've seen. So I think the people have noticed. Secondarily, today, I led the show with it. I led the drive with it, that Joe Biden called a lid on the White House public availability or any scheduling at 9 o'clock this morning. I mean,
yeah, I know.
And this is, I mean, and, it's all fun and games when we talk about political campaigns. I mean, that's one thing. But the United States consulate was attacked last night in Iraq. and the Iranians are taking credit for it, and the president has called a lid. Meantime, his Secretary of Defense is just getting out of the hospital for prostate cancer. I mean, one wonders who's running the show in Washington, D.C. right now.
Yeah, well, the staff is running the show because, he may weigh in here and there, and they have to pay attention to him because he does carry the title of president. But I think it's mostly being run by staff, and I think he has very little to do. And I think the thing that I'm frightened about is that you're right. It's a tense time in the world, and I don't trust Joe Biden to take that 2 a.m. phone call where a life and death decision has to be made. I just don't trust him to do that right now, and it's scary to me that this guy is our president because I don't think he's up to the task, and the cabinet would have to act, and the vice president would have to be in on it to take him out of office at this point, and I just don't see them being willing to do that. So we're stuck with what we got, and let's just pray that if something happens, it happens during regular working hours when staff is there. Because otherwise, I don't know what in the heck's going to happen here, and I don't know if he's up to it.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Brian, and it's frightening if you go down that road and think about some of the possibilities between now and next January when we will hopefully, fingers crossed, have a new commander-in-chief. Brian Wilson.
Yeah, just one thing real quick about that approval number. The number that jumped out of me out of that survey was the independent number. Only 28% of independents support Joe Biden.
Wow.
You don't win a national election with 28% support out of the middle. It seems to me that when Democrats look at that number, they're going to have to face the sobering fact that they're going to get their clocks cleaned if they don't do something. So I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen. But I just can't believe they're going to just keep marching in the same direction with failure to be a certain option.
I agree with you, Brian Wilson, and I believe you need to focus on the roadway and get home safe and sound, my friend, to those beautiful dogs and that beautiful cabana wife. Be safe, and we'll try to keep it held down for you, and we'll talk to you tomorrow, my friend.
All right. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
There's Brian Wilson on his own radio show. Brian Wilson on the drive with Brian Wilson. No Brian Wilson from now until 7 o'clock. Matt Murphy and for Brian Wilson. We are anticipating a conversation with Mayor Glenn Jacobs. We are anticipating a conversation with Dan Thomas of News Channel 4, Channel 4, WSMV, to tell you what you can expect over the next 48 or so hours with regard to the weather, because there's another weather pattern that's going to create more snow on top of the already existing snow that's not going to melt by then. It's 3:51 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
4 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 18 degrees in Music City and could see wind chills of negative 15 come tonight and tomorrow morning. Wind chill advisory in effect until tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And Middle Tennessee isn't expected to see temperatures above freezing until Thursday afternoon. Channel 4's Brendan Tierney on what to expect if you're going outside.
The big issue is the wind chill, with that wind blowing up against your face. And the CDC says you want to have as much skin covered as possible when it gets this cold outside. But the wind is not the only issue. Slipping and falling is another deal. When you look down, you might be able to just see what looks like snow. But actually under this, it's all ice. It's extremely slippery in these harder compacted down areas compared to somewhere over here like this. There wasn't really touch. It's still that light fluffy snow that we saw yesterday.
And high temperatures are forecasted to be in the mid-30s come Thursday, but there is another chance for now, and high temperatures dip below freezing again on Friday. Traffic complete weather forecast coming up in 5 minutes. The U.S. government warning of more threats to American Jews, their synagogues, and community centers. Andy Field with the latest from the nation's capital.
Over the weekend, the FBI and Homeland Security warned of bomb threats against Jewish houses of worship, saying it's likely those threats are coming from overseas. Police say the more than 400 threats so far have been aimed at synagogues or Jewish community centers, others at schools and hospitals. They have yet to uncover an explosive at any of these threat sites, but the danger has forced those locations to dramatically increase security.
And crime right now in Tennessee. An Aaron, Tennessee homeowner facing animal cruelty charges after officials found multiple dogs that were left without food, water, or proper shelter. The owner now faces 8 counts of animal cruelty after surrendering the animals, many of those dogs puppies. And according to Aaron police, those dogs are now with Proverbs 12:10 Animal Rescue, where they'll receive vet care before being placed up for adoption. And the House Rules Committee has put its Hunter Biden contempt of Congress resolution on hold. Andy Field tells us the Republican tug-of-war with the president's son may soon be over.
After weeks saying he'd only testify in public, Hunter Biden's attorneys have now suggested he would be willing to sit for the closed-door deposition House Republicans demanded. That hasn't stopped committee chairmen from continuing to threaten sending subpoenas or declaring the president's son in contempt. Hunter Biden did show up and offer to testify in an open hearing. The Republican majority refused the offer.
And that is the latest news, traffic, weather forecast coming up next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
All right, friends and neighbors, it's Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson, 406, and a good afternoon. Hope you're doing well. Super Talk 99.7 WTN this Tuesday. Roadways looking good. Jack Womack's he's all on top of that. Jack Womack's got the roadways covered in and around the Nashville area as we are still recovering from the winter storm that dumped some 8 inches of snow at my place in Mount Juliet. What'd you get there, Chris Webber? I'm sorry. Did I catch you mid-Rolo? My apologies if I did.
No, I'm just still savoring the leftover flavor. But
did you do the old ruler deal?
I did not measure, but just the old eyeball. I would say 8 inches is pretty close to what I got.
We got right around 8 inches. McMorey, any measurements down at the Morey homestead? What do you got?
I'd say right around 7, maybe a little bit less than 8, but yeah. Hefty amount.
Yeah, more snow in a 24-hour period in the metro region than we normally get in any given calendar year.
Nice.
And more to come.
Yes.
More to come later on this week. We will have Dan Thomas, our media partners over at WSMV, will be with us at 5:35 this afternoon on The Drive to alert us to what we can expect over the next 24 and 48 hours. There's more snow coming Thursday, we anticipate. We'll tell you more about that in the 5 o'clock hour. Right now, Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your afternoon, whatever you might be doing at home, in your office, in your place of business, or on the roads. Be safe, and thank you for taking us where you go. We've been breaking down the incredible victory of Donald Trump last evening in Iowa. A lot of folks are angry at media organizations for calling this race as early as they did. The race was called 30 to 40 minutes after the quote-unquote polls closed, but there are no polls, and there was no tally to make. All of the voting happened in place in Iowa as it is a caucus, not a primary, so there's a slightly different dynamic, giving the media the ability to call it as early as they did. But it was a no-brainer who was going to win. The only question was whether or not Donald J. Trump would get over 50%, and he certainly did. One of the reasons for that was the level of support that he got, not just from Iowa, but from around the United States of America. One of those supporters is Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs, and Glenn joins us on the Drive hotline this afternoon to talk about everything he saw in Iowa and his support of the soon-to-be future president of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. Mayor Jacobs, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Hey, Matt, I am doing very well. It's a little loud. I'm actually in one of our snowplow trucks. These guys are out here taking care of the roads. We've got about 8 inches of snow as well. I'm riding with my friend Piglet, and we're trying to go up a pretty steep hill. It's treacherous, and my hat is just off to everyone around the state and all these road crews who get out in this stuff. It's when you see it up close and personal, what they do, it can be a little hair-raising at times.
Did you say your snowplow driver's name was Piglet? Did I hear that correctly?
Yep. Yes. Well, that's his nickname, but Lyndon, but Piglet's his nickname.
So obviously you've gotten back home since you were in Iowa yesterday.
Yeah, with all the weather, obviously, and I wanted to get home as soon as I could. Unfortunately, I had some travel issues, like many folks did. But yeah, I'm here, and we got quite a bit of accumulation as well, and I'm really concerned about tonight because as the sun is melting things, stuff is getting better, but obviously with the cold temperatures that we're going to have here in East Tennessee as well as you all, could be pretty treacherous tonight. So please, if you don't have to travel, stay home.
Well, that's great advice and good words from the mayor of Knox County, Glenn Jacobs, who was in Iowa braving the cold conditions to caucus on behalf of the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Tell us about your experience, Glenn.
It was amazing. It was really, for me, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The caucuses are literally democracy in action, and it's kind of a throwback because they use paper ballots and put them in a box, and after everybody's done voting, they open the box and they count them in front of the people right there in public. And just it's an amazing event. Of course, the lead up to it, the rallies, all the excitement, the energy. It was an amazing time.
And obviously, the voters spoke loud and clear in Iowa, offering Donald Trump over 50% of the vote, despite the millions and millions of dollars spent by Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley alike. What sort of message do you believe this sends to the rest of the country, and more particularly to the mainstream media that sit, some of these folks on the media desks sit in slack-jawed amazement as Donald Trump continues to outperform their expectations. And I would suggest those people don't know regular folks, regular Americans, if they met them in a diner somewhere in Knoxville, Tennessee. What type of message do you think this sends?
You're exactly right. I think they're completely out of touch. The American people are fed up with the way the country's going. They're fed up with the way that Donald Trump's been treated. He's called a threat to democracy. He's not the threat to democracy. The people trying to keep him off the ballot are a threat to democracy. He's not a threat to freedom. The people that have indicted him and just 2 tiers of justice, that's a threat to everyone's freedom. And I think the American people we're just fed up with the border, the economy, everything. Trump did so much good work, and Biden has literally just botched it all and reversed the direction that we're going, and it's just a disaster.
I want to play a little bit of Trump's remarks from Iowa the last 24 or so hours and get your response to this. We're talking with Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs as he rides in a snowplow truck in Knox County, making sure the roadways are safe and sound over there in Knoxville, Tennessee. Here's Donald Trump from yesterday in Iowa.
Another man who's a friend of mine. He's another one I'm not going to mess around with. He's Knox County, Tennessee. Do you know Glenn Jacobs? Goes by the name of Kane. Kane. Where is Kane? Look at the size of this guy. Man, oh man. That's it. He's all man. He's all man. It's good. How many years have you been doing that? You've been Kane, one of the great characters. And how many? So how tall are you? You're 6 what? 6'8", and weigh what when you wrestle? About 3. Well, that's not bad. I'm not that far away. Ew. That's not good. You just ruined my day. 300. Well, all I know is, I guess there's a little acting involved, but when I see these guys, some of them like The Undertaker, right? And I see him, and he walks around the ring lifting a 300-pound guy over his shoulders like this. It may be acting, but there aren't too many. And then he throws him into the seats. It's pretty great. And he's done a fantastic job as mayor, Tennessee.
Oh, that's a nice endorsement there, Glenn, as Donald Trump speaks about you in Iowa. That had to be pretty special for you.
Yeah, it sure was. I've had the opportunity to sit down and actually talk with President Trump, and it's amazing. He's just a dude, really. I thought it was going to be one of those deals. We went to the golf course in Bedminster. I thought it was going to be one of those deals. You walk in, shake hands, take a picture, and that's it. He talked with me and a friend of mine who went with me for almost half an hour. And the whole time he was engaged, just very down to earth. So I wish more people had the opportunity to really meet him personally and to see what is behind that kind of persona, especially that the mainstream media puts out there. To me, that's actually the most impressive thing about the guy.
Why was it so important for you to go to Iowa?
Well, we're going to make sure that Trump wins, and also the unity that the party needs at this point. I'm glad that it was an overwhelming win, a historic win, and really, I think, eliminates any doubt as to who's the front runner. As you mentioned earlier, I'm sure that the mainstream media is all slack-jawed today, like what happened, and probably the people in Iowa are stupid, which they're not. They know what they want. And it's just to send the message. I'm one of those people, the more I think about it, the more upset I get about the indictments, the literally two tiers of justice that we have in this country now. And even if you're not a Trump supporter, even if you're not a Republican, everyone should be concerned about that. Because when the government can arbitrarily decide what laws it's going to enforce, when it can just literally trump up charges on people, we're in a very bad place. And sadly, that's one of the things that Donald Trump has done is illustrate where we are, and it's not good.
Mayor Glenn Jacobs joining us for a few moments, talking about his visit to Iowa, his support of Donald Trump, and the victory from last evening in Iowa. How quickly do you believe this primaries wrapped up. I don't know that it gets to Tennessee and Super Tuesday before other candidates, the two other main contenders, Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, call it. You can only spend so much money with no results. I think Trump wins New Hampshire next week. Nikki Haley might perform fairly well there, considering Chris Christie's out of the race and Vivek Ramaswamy now out of the race. Do you think this thing is wrapped up by the time we vote in Tennessee?
I do, actually. I think that, I think New Hampshire will be tighter than Iowa was, it looks like. But I think by the time the Super Tuesday rolls around, everybody can see the writing on the wall. They should see it now. And the other candidates argue that they're going to have more and more trouble raising money and doing those sort of things just because everyone can see where this thing's going, and it's pretty much inevitable at this point.
Glenn, every time I talk to you, people admonish me that I never ask you this question, so I'll leave it here and I'll ask you the question, and then we'll say goodbye and let you finish your work scraping the roads out there in Knox County. But what's next on the horizon for you? Your term limited as Knox County mayor. Obviously, you're talking to folks. You're visiting. You and I will be together later on this month at the Davidson County Reagan Dinner here in Nashville, Tennessee. What's next on the horizon? You just kind of putting the feelers out and seeing where you can put yourself to public service?
Yeah, and really, I haven't made any decisions about anything yet. I still have not quite 3 years left as mayor, and just concentrating on doing the best job that I possibly can as that, and then also trying to do what I can do to make sure that Donald Trump is the next president of the United States. And those other issues will take care of themselves in due time, I'm very sure.
Well, be safe on the salt trucks out there, Glenn, and on the roadways, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Congratulations on a successful effort in Iowa, and we'll do this again very soon. Take care.
Thanks, Matt. Bye-bye.
All right. There's Glenn Jacobs, mayor of Knox County. Several years left in Knox County as mayor there, but many are anticipating that Glenn would be a formidable opponent should he decide to throw his hat in the ring for, I don't know, governor, perhaps. I hear that a lot when we speak to Glenn, and I like Glenn a lot. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders for it and understands the white-hot spotlight that is American politics, considering he's been in that spotlight in the entertainment world for so long, and then as Knox County mayor. The U.S. Supreme Court rejected an Indiana public school district's request to defend a policy that restricted bathroom access by sex. It's a story that I'm going to cover for you this hour on The Drive with no Brian Wilson, Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. We'll also take your thoughts on the results from Iowa and what it means moving forward with candidates still on the ballot. Nikki Haley performed, but a lot of that performance hinged on Democrats voting in the Republican caucus. We'll talk about that as well. Plus, we'll hear from Donald Trump himself as he delivered remarks last evening that you did not hear on MSNBC. I'll tell you why you didn't hear them next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN 419 on The Drive.
It's going to get even colder tonight in Middle Tennessee. We let you know how cold and when. And the latest Money News report. Those stories 30 minutes after the hour, 4 o'clock on Super Talk, 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Mr. Morey. It's 4:24 right now on the drive. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. Brian traveling back from Iowa after spending a day in the really, really cold weather, although it's pretty cold here and only expected to get colder, as mentioned by Mr. Morey moments ago. We'll continue the action until 7 o'clock tonight on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Would love to hear from you. I'm going to open up the phones. I want to know what your reaction to last night's results were, or what they are. Obviously, Donald Trump was expected to win. The big question was whether or not he would get 50% of the vote. He did. He dispatched of Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. As a matter of fact, you put those totals together, DeSantis and Nikki together, and they don't match Donald Trump's total, obviously. Vivek Ramaswamy saw fit to leave the race. I've got some audio from Vivek coming up in just a couple of minutes as well. So the question then is, where do we go from here? Vivek Ramaswamy saw the writing on the wall. He was fourth in what is essentially a four-person race, recognizing that he would only spend good money after bad moving forward. He decided to remove himself from consideration and offer his full-throated endorsement toward Donald Trump. And obviously, Donald Trump is accepting of that, considering that they're meeting together, they're campaigning together in New Hampshire this evening. Here's Trump last night talking about the game plan should he be the 47th president of the United States of America. Listen
So we're
in.
to come together. We're going to drill, baby, drill right away. Drill, baby, drill. We're going to seal up the border. Because right now we have an invasion. We have an invasion of millions and millions of people that are coming into our.
Oh, sorry about that. The folks at CNN decided to cut away from the latter portion of that speech. I want to play this again for you. I actually selected the wrong cut there, where Jake Tapper decides to cut away when he starts talking about immigration. As I mentioned last week on my show between noon and 3, Donald Trump has recognized the four pillars of his reelection campaign. Pillar number 1 is border security. Pillar number 2 is the economy, and with that, energy and energy independence, and then removing us from any and all foreign entanglements and getting us back to stability in areas of the world that are now on fire, like the Middle East. You do these four things and you impress upon the American people your desire to do those four things, and you hearken back to what seemed to be the salad days of 2018, 2019, right before what Donald Trump would tell you was the China virus. Let me get that clip. I got it.
Baby, drill. We're going to seal up the border. Because right now we have an invasion. We have an invasion of millions and millions of people that are coming into our country. I can't imagine why they think that's a good thing.
Donald Trump declaring victory with a
Let's listen to him
historically
here.
strong showing
Listen
in
to
the
him here.
Iowa caucuses. If these numbers hold, the biggest victory for a non-incumbent president in the modern era for this contest. A relatively subdued speech as these things go so far, although here he is right now under my voice. You hear him repeating his anti-immigrant rhetoric. He did take time to...
Anti-immigrant rhetoric. So CNN pulls out of his speech. He's delivering his Iowa victory speech. And the mainstream media will traditionally go to those speeches, allow the victor to offer his remarks. Oftentimes they will go to concession speeches as well, which I saw many of those last night. Heard Nikki Haley, heard Vivek Ramaswamy. You'll hear from both of those coming up in just a moment on the drive. Heard from Ron DeSantis, obviously, offering hope and whatnot. And Nikki Haley is ridiculously talking about it's a two-person race now, despite the fact that she came in third, which has led me to a new nickname for Nikki Haley. I'll unveil that in the 5 o'clock hour. Very excited about my new nickname for Nikki Haley, because she says that it's now a two-person race, and she finished third. But she also wants you to know that she's a part of that two-person race, despite the fact that she finished third, which makes zero sense to anyone, except maybe Nikki Haley. I don't know. One way or the other, we'll do that in the 5 o'clock hour. So you listen to what the mainstream media is doing now. You watch what they're doing now. And I've noticed a pattern amongst those in the mainstream media. They, for the last, during his presidency, sure, and post-presidency, they played a game of gotcha with Donald Trump. Really since 2016, since he became the Republican nominee. And I don't know that they took him that seriously even after he became the Republican nominee, because they thought up until election night that this was Hillary Clinton's in the bag. No one within the leftist, statist media, the CNN, the hashtag never CNNs of the world, the ABC, CBS, NBC, Washington Post, New York Times, you know the ilk. None of them, in my opinion, truly believed that Donald Trump would be the president of the United States. It was only after he was elected that they began clamoring about stolen elections and Russian interference and Russian collusion. And it was a made-up narrative out of a whole cloth, made up by the Hillary Clinton people. And the water was carried by the mainstream media starting in 2016, moving into Inauguration Day, January of 2017. And it interrupted major portions of his presidency, having to fight back against a false narrative presented by the mainstream media. And their focus and direction was always on one thing: to get the orange guy, get Trump. And they've yet to get him. They've yet to get him. And now, considering the results of Iowa, considering what we expect out of New Hampshire and South Carolina, I think they're going to turn their attention to a different target. Donald Trump has long said, there's a reason that this meme has been going around the internet as virally as it has, where there's a photograph of Trump, and Trump says in the meme, you know, they're not after me, they're after you, I'm just in the way. They're not trying to get me, they're trying to get you, I'm just in the way. Well, now they're saying the quiet part out loud, that you're the problem. MAGA Republicans are the problem. People that will vote for Donald Trump, you are a problem to the mainstream media. We'll talk about it next on Super Talk 99.7 WT, and it's 4:31 on The Drive.
4:31, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 19 degrees in Nashville. TDOT still recommending people stay off the roads if at all possible. Temperatures are set to stay frigid with the wind chill advisory in effect. It's going to get even colder. Channel 4's Lisa Spencer lets us know the details of that wind chill advisory.
This is going to be in effect through tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And of course, the travel conditions are still going to remain very hazardous out there. The roads are slick, they're icy. Now, the main thoroughfares are getting better, but still, there's some tough traveling on some of those secondary roads. Single-digit lows and sub-zero wind chills is what we're talking about in this forecast. And this is our wind chill advisory, the blue representing that advisory area. Everybody here in the mid-state, we're talking temperatures that are going to feel like 5 below to 15 below.
And we got a forecast traffic report just ahead, 5 minutes. Now over to some money news. Daria Albinger lets us know what happened today on Wall Street. It's back open.
Stocks closed lower to start a holiday-shortened week. The Dow plunged 232 points. The Nasdaq tumbled 28, and the S&P gave up 18. Stocks fell as Treasury yields rose. A federal judge is siding with the White House and blocking JetBlue Airways from buying Spirit Airlines. The Justice Department sued to block the merger, saying it would drive up fares by eliminating Spirit, which is the nation's largest low-cost carrier. A member of the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors says he's becoming increasingly confident that inflation will continue to fall to the Fed's 2% target rate later this year. Christopher Waller's comments follow similar sentiments from other Fed officials that the central bank is on track to cut interest rates this year. We get new rules this week from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to further rein in banks' ability to charge customers overdraft fees. The banking industry is expected to push back.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
4:38, we continue to break down, almost 4:39. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson on the drive. We continue to break down the results of Iowa. Vivek Ramaswamy is out. I'll get more into the media's reaction to all of this and how that relates to you and your vote. Let's hear from Vivek Ramaswamy as he announced that he was suspending his campaign and immediately turned his attention to endorsing President Donald Trump.
Who came in fourth tonight. Let's hear what he has to say. He's there with his family.
Not just to the Democrats, but to our own side. And not just to other campaigns and candidacies, but to ours. And so I will stick to the truth tonight. The first hard truth, and this one's hard for me. I got to admit this. But we've looked at it every which way, and I think it is true that we did not achieve the surprise that we wanted to deliver tonight. And I think that that's just a hard fact that we're going to have to accept as a campaign. And the question then is, what do we do that is right for our country? And so Purv and I, we actually didn't make this contingency plan before everybody told us to. We said, no, we're not doing that. But we talked about it tonight. We took a little bit of time in our apartment in Des Moines before coming here to make some hard choices. And I wanted to make a couple of announcements tonight to get the business out of the way. And then I want to tell you where we're going. As of this moment, we are going to suspend this presidential campaign. And this is going to have to be, there is no path for me to be the next president absent things that we don't want to see happen in this country. And I think that I am very worried for our country. I think we are skating on thin ice as a nation. We have done everything in our part to make, and done, every one of us in this room has done our part to save this country. And I am so proud of every one of you who have lifted us up. But we're a campaign founded on the truth. And so that's why we've made that decision today. And I'm also making the decision that this has to be an America First candidate in that White House. As I've said since the beginning, there are two America First candidates in this race. And earlier tonight, I called Donald Trump to tell him that I congratulated him on his victory. And now going forward, he will have my full endorsement for the presidency. And I think we're going to do the right thing for this country. And so I'm going to ask you to follow me in taking our America First movement to the next level.
Vivek Ramaswamy. All right, there you go. Vivek Ramaswamy last evening, lifting that from Fox News. Vivek Ramaswamy announcing that he was suspending his presidential campaign. I don't know that Vivek had the footing that he anticipated to have in Iowa. I would say this. Vivek Ramaswamy was kind of somewhat of a poor man's Donald Trump. And as much as I understand that he was younger, he was vibrant, he's incredibly well-spoken. And I believe that Vivek Ramaswamy will be a good part of Trump 47. And I believe that he will be a part of Trump 47 if there is a Trump 47. Now, what role that takes, I do not believe Vivek Ramaswamy checks the boxes that Donald Trump is looking for in a vice presidential candidate. Vivek would make a good cabinet member on some level. He's obviously an incredible businessman. He's well-spoken. He loves this country. And I think he ran a great campaign, except that he was running against the guy that kind of invented the type of campaign that he was running. And that's Donald Trump. You cannot out-Trump Trump. You cannot be more America first than Donald Trump. And Vivek Ramaswamy was attempting to do those things. Now, that was a better campaign tactic, in my opinion, than Ron DeSantis has chosen to take. Ron DeSantis is getting better polling data. He's getting better numbers, and he is still in the fight. But I believe Ron DeSantis is hurting his credentials amongst conservatives, Trump and non-Trump conservatives alike, more in the long term than anything, because he seems to want to take the fight to Trump as opposed to extending the fight outward toward Joe Biden and offering different and better solutions that are being offered from Donald J. Trump. The message last evening was perfectly clear that the conservative, libertarian-minded people across the United States of America, the majority of them want Donald Trump to have another opportunity to dispatch of Joe Biden. They do not believe, we do not believe, that all things considered, that 2020 was fairly decided. I am not suggesting anything beyond what I just said. I do not believe that certain states follow their own rules with regard to how voting ought to be conducted. I, like Donald Trump, would agree, and Donald Trump said as much last night, that if we do not stop mail-in balloting in the United States of America, there will not be a fairly contested election as long as Democrats are allowed to get away with some of the type of things that they were allowed to get away with in 2020. I'm not talking about voting machine irregularities and all of that. I'm talking about basics, like having a cutoff for counting mail-in ballots, and states like Pennsylvania that allowed mail-in ballots to be commingled with legal ballots after the cutoff date. They received thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of mail-in ballots and allowed those to go into the hopper with the ballots that came in by the cutoff. These are ballots that came in after the cutoff date that were postmarked after the date certain that they were supposed to be cut down. And they didn't do it. They commingled them. They opened them up. They commingled them. And there's no putting that toothpaste back in the tube. Donald Trump agrees that until we get a handle on that sort of shenanigans, the Democrats will continue to exploit those sorts of shenanigans. These are the types of this is the type of messaging that Donald Trump has gotten to the American people. And I believe it's part of what secured him a victory. The American people want to see Trump on that ballot in November of 2024. Secondarily, and more importantly than even that, more importantly than looking back, Donald Trump has begun to look forward. Has anyone else noticed this distinction? He spent a lot of time looking back in 2023 to 2020. And he still reflects on it on occasion during his stump speeches. But I've noticed a refocus in Trump in as much as when we saw him on the stage the other night at the Fox News town hall, and when we saw him last night in his acceptance speech, he's far more concerned with what happens November of this year than he was with what happened November of 2020. And I think that's a great move. We do not forget, we do not forgive, but we need to move forward and recognize what's happening right now in our country and how we change that in November of 2024. And Trump has the 4 pillars of his campaign as identified by me that I think is a winning strategy against this incredibly unpopular president of the United States, who most of us do not believe is running the show. Those pillars are border security, energy policy, economic policy, and foreign policy that does not entangle us with boots on the ground in wars that we need not be a part of. And as Trump said last night, none of this, and I believe him, none of this that's happening with these foreign entanglements would be happening were it not for Joe Biden and his presidency and a lack of leadership on the part of crazy Sleepy Joe. Joe Biden's ineptitude started the moment he walked into office. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, and we're going to get into it here in a second, there's been a massive escalation of hostilities in the Middle East with just yesterday, and mainstream media is not covering any of this. Why not? There is a possibility that we are being drawn into a hot war with Iran right now because of the ineptitude of the commander-in-chief and the absence of our Secretary of Defense. I don't begrudge him getting prostate surgery. Obviously, you want to put your health first, but you got to tell somebody, bro. Got to let us know. What the hell you doing? Oh, it was elective surgery. Elective surgery? When's the last time someone was identified with prostate cancer, and when you ask them, hey, what's going on in your... Oh, I just had a little elective surgery. Well, what'd you have that elective surgery on? What are you, a bone spur in your... I mean, oh, no, it's prostate cancer. Prostate cancer? That's not elective surgery. That's... You could die if you don't get it surgery. So we got a missing in action Secretary of Defense. We've got an MIA president of the United States. And in the meantime, Iran, not proxies, not Hezbollah, not the Houthis, not bought and paid for by Iran. Iran bombed the U.S. consulate in northern Iraq. You saw videos last night going viral claiming to show the moment of impact, and there's some question about confirmation of authenticity. The consulate was one of 8 different locations targeted inside of Iraq. Several explosions were reported near the U.S. consulate in Iraq. An Iraqi security source reportedly told ABC News. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps took responsibility for the attacks, saying that it was targeted. Let me say that again. The Iranians took responsibility for the attacks. I will repeat. The president put a lid on his day at 9 o'clock this morning. And our consulate was under attack yesterday. In the meantime, you can't find a media outlet that discusses any of this because the reality is too stark. The consequences are too grave. They can't tell you the truth about what's in the White House right now. To do so would be to expose Joe Biden to the point that they cannot continue to defend him against what they've decided is the ultimate threat to the United States of America, and that's Donald Trump. And so we combat that with some truth. We combat that with some reality. Sadly, it's not good. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps took responsibility for the attacks, saying that it was targeting the, quote, headquarters of spies and, quote, anti-Iranian terrorist gatherings with ballistic missiles. Coalition forces shot down drones near the airport in Iraq, near Erbil, E-R-B-I-L, Erbil. The moment ballistic missiles passed through the U.S. CRAM system and hit American bases in Iraq, was captured on video and posted online on X. So the distinction here is important to make, that this is not a proxy group acting, quote unquote, independent of the government of Iran. Up until this moment, you had Hezbollah acting through funding from Iran. You had the Houthis acting in the Red Sea, and their funding came from Iran as well. These groups, these organizations, had a certain level of plausible deniability with regard to their association with Iran. This is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard taking direct credit for an attack on a United States installation. Normally, these types of attacks are carried out by proxy. The Biden administration, their response is what? I mean, you tell me, and I could be reading these, I could be reading all of this wrong in the American response to it. But that's an act of war by the Iranian government. That doesn't mean that the United States of America needs to respond, but it means if we do, I believe if we do not respond, they will continue to engage in this manner until they initiate a response from us. It's a developing story, and it's a scary story. I'm curious your thoughts on it. 615-737-9986. 615-737-WWTN. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. It's The Drive on Super Talk.
5:01, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 19 degrees in Nashville. That wind chill advisory in effect until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, and more snowfall expected Thursday. Nashville's official snowfall accumulation the past 2 days stands at 7.6 inches. Of that total, 6.3 occurred yesterday. That breaks the daily snowfall record for January 15th. And in a normal year, Nashville gets an average of 4.7 inches of snowfall. So the city got more than an entire winter's worth of snow in just one storm. And taking a look at other snowfall around Davidson County, Belmead and Berry Hill both about 9 inches. Oak Hill 8.5, Antioch 7.9. There in Dixon County 8 inches. And then in Williamson County had Nolensville with 5.5 inches. Green Hill and Gallatin both 8 inches, and Gladville 7.5 inches. And with all this snow, cars are stuck all over Middle Tennessee. So make sure and try to rock that car back and forth. Any reflectors can help as well. Or you can be like this guy in Etheridge. His SUV ended up in a ditch, and a group of men with horses came to the rescue. Those horses successfully pulled that stuck car free. Got a latest traffic report, a weather forecast on the way in 5 minutes. North Korea's foreign minister in Russia amid growing concerns the two countries could strike an arms deal. Here's Ines de la Catera.
North Korea's foreign minister Choi Son-hui arriving in Moscow for a 3-day visit, according to North Korean state TV KCNA. This comes after the U.S. and South Korea say Pyongyang has been sending Russia weapons, including artillery and missiles. The U.S. saying it has evidence missiles provided by North Korea have been used by Russia in Ukraine. In September, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un took a rare trip to Russia to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin, though it's still unclear what kind of deal the two leaders may have struck.
Crime right now in Tennessee. An Aaron, Tennessee homeowner facing animal cruelty charges after officials found multiple dogs left without food, water, or proper shelter. That owner now faces 8 counts of animal cruelty after surrendering those animals, many of which were puppies. According to Aaron police, those dogs are now with Proverbs 12:10 Animal Rescue, where they receive vet care before being placed up for adoption. In some entertainment news, popular rapper Nicki Minaj has added a Nashville date to her tour after a large fan demand. She'll be in Bridgestone on March 24th. And Pink Friday 2 World Tour is now the rapper's highest-selling tour to date, with over 25 arena shows sold out just a few days into the official pre-sale. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather coming up next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Cold out there today, 5:07. Good afternoon, good evening. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. He's traveling back from blistering cold Iowa in the aftermath of the Republican primary, well, I should say Republican caucus in that state, won by Donald Trump. I'll be here till 7 o'clock tonight. Happy to be here. Thank you for being with us, whatever time you're able to give us. I'm certainly appreciative of that. You know what I would be very appreciative of is a power cord for a MacBook Pro. So I typically don't bring my power cord with me. And typically I bring my laptop in during my normal broadcast between noon and 3. And I have several stories up on my laptop. And I put several stories up. If you're watching on Super Talk TV, hello, welcome in. By the way, we'll get to the headlines coming up in just a moment after I stop complaining. So, by the way, Chris Webber also behind the glass. Mac Moore is behind the further glass in the news closet. Mac's gathering headlines. Chris is making sure that everything, stays in order as it should be. And Jack Womack's over in the traffic center. He's keeping you safe and sound on the roadway. So, with all of us together, we can assimilate a team that will measure up to a meager facsimile of Brian Wilson. And that's basically what we're trying to do. So, I got several headlines up on the normal computer. I got my laptop computer, and I've got a couple of stories that I want to tell you about on the laptop computer. It's been sitting here, and I noticed that it was down to 40% about 4:15 this afternoon. And now it's down to 12%.
What happened?
Well, I think it's Fox News.
Yeah, it is very ad heavy.
Fox News runs those ads underneath. So if you have Fox News a page up, if I present a page that I want to discuss at a later time, it just sucks the life out of your computer. So I'm wondering if anyone in the building has a cord, or if I'm just destined to lose it. I'm at 12% now. It's like you're losing a loved one. It's like a goldfish is dying right before my very eyes.
You need like an iPhone?
Oh wait, hold on. I did something. Stand by. Hold on.
You gotta keep those plugged
My
in.
headphones just came on. Everything's going to hell in a handbasket around here. Where's Brian Wilson, and does he want his show back? You were saying?
iPhone charger?
MacBook Pro charger.
Yeah, it's going to be harder to come by.
Oh, well. You know what? It will motivate me to get to these stories quickly so that I can close out these windows.
There you go.
How about that? So we're on to it in the 5 o'clock hour. Don't forget, coming up at 5:35 this afternoon, Dan Thomas, our media partner over on the television side of things, WSMV TV, meteorologist to the stars, Dan Thomas, will be here on the drive to alert us as to what is going to go down over the next 48 hours. There is news that there will be another batch of snow. Nothing of the significance like we got the last, several days, but enough to put another couple of inches on the ground for most of us in Middle Tennessee. So we'll talk to Dan about that at 5:35. We've already had an opportunity to speak with Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs about his participation in the Iowa caucus. And Brian Wilson himself checked in on his own show in the 3 o'clock hour. Those things will be up and running on the podcast page, Supertalk 99.7 WTN on our website. We'd love to hear from you, 615-737-9986. If you have any thoughts about the Iowa caucus, we're taking those all afternoon long. The results are clear. Donald Trump is the man. And, it's one of those deals where several years ago, I was playing golf on a golf course in Montgomery, Alabama, with my father-in-law. And the golf course that we were on had recently had a storm. And a huge, beautiful oak tree had been hit. It was just off the course, so it wasn't interrupting play at all, but it had fallen over. And I guess this was maybe a month or so after the storm had come through. And I said to my father-in-law, because the tree was laying on its side, the roots were still kind of embedded into the ground to a certain degree, and the leaves were falling off the tree. It was droopy and whatnot. And I said, that tree's dead. It just doesn't know it yet. And I feel the same way about Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley and their political campaigns for the 2024 cycle. They're dead, but they just don't know it yet. The writing is clear, and I don't know if they're lying to themselves or lying to us when they tell us that they still see a path forward in becoming the Republican Party nominee. I understand that there are some hardcore never-Trumpers amongst fellow conservatives. And all I can tell you is you're going to have to get over it and make a decision. It will become a binary choice for you. Once Trump becomes the nominee, then I would think that the picture in front of you becomes very focused and clear as to the direction of the country. It's not just a meme to say that we would take a couple of mean tweets and $1.90 a gallon gasoline. But it is true. Personality aside, what do you want? Do you want lack of leadership, feckless leadership, an absence of leadership, and what that brings you to the United States of America? Or do you want someone that wants to put America first with regard to decision-making, whether it's on a foreign policy front or a domestic side? For me, the answer is clear. Not so much for Nikki Haley. As she was delivering remarks last evening, Nikki Haley wanted to remind everyone that, well, let's let her say it.
I can safely say tonight, Iowa made this Republican primary a two-person race.
Okay, Nikki Haley finished third last night. Donald Trump had over half the votes in a fairly crowded field. Ron DeSantis finished a solid second. Nikki Haley right behind him in third. Vivek Ramaswamy fourth. Where does this make sense?
I can safely say tonight, Iowa made this Republican primary a two-person race.
A two-person race between Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump? How does Nikki Haley manage to get into that two-person race? I mean, we learned a few things from Talladega Nights, right?
You ain't first, you're last. You know what I'm talking about? That phrase, trademark, not to use that tradition of Ricky Bobby. If you ain't first, you're last.
If you ain't first, you're last, which inspired me last evening to come up with a new nickname for Nikki Haley. We're going to call her Nikki Bobby from now on. Because Nikki Bobby, if you ain't first, you're last. This is not a war of attrition where somebody gets knocked off the island every couple of weeks and the final two competitors get into the squared circle and battle it out for, winner takes all. This is a collective moment and movement, and I don't see a path forward for you, Nikki Haley, particularly when you consider, when you break down some of these numbers, the woman's run a pretty bad campaign, all things considered. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy was an unknown entity at the beginning of this race, and he's made a name for himself so much so that individuals believe that he would be well-positioned to be a part of Trump's cabinet. Nikki Haley was a part of the Trump administration as an ambassador. And she's decided that he's the enemy and she's going to go after him. She's going to present herself in war hawk footing. And we're told that half of the votes that she got in Iowa were Democrats that crossed over and voted in the Republican caucus. Half the votes were Democrats. The best you can do is New Hampshire. South Carolina, if the polling holds in South Carolina, you're just getting destroyed in your state that you governed for 8 years. Nikki Haley was governor of South Carolina for 8 years. If there's any state that Nikki Haley should be doing well in, it would be her home state, one would presume. Donald Trump has over half the votes in that state as well, according to the latest Real Clear Politics poll. I've hesitated up until today, this moment, delving into the weeds with regard to the politics of all of this. But at some point, if you love your country and you value your political future, it's time to hang them up. And I understand that for many, it seems early, but not after what happened last night. Donald Trump is not an incumbent. Although many view him as such, he is just as much an outsider as a Nikki Haley or a Ron DeSantis or a Vivek Ramaswamy, and he just destroyed them. The American people through Iowa have spoken. And it's not as if Iowa, and I understand that Iowa doesn't always make the proper predictions when it comes to presidential elections. But New Hampshire is no different. Donald Trump's in front in New Hampshire. South Carolina is no different. Every state you look at, Donald Trump is the pick. And so I believe it would behoove us sooner rather than later to get on with the business of focusing on the issues that truly matter to the American people. Issues that will move the needle in the squishy middle, and that's where we need it moved, in the squishy middle. Sadly, not enough people pay attention to presidential politics early on, and there are a lot of Americans that wouldn't know presidential politics or Iowa caucuses if it hit them in the head. They wouldn't know. Wouldn't be able to find Iowa on a map with a flashlight and a compass. Those are the people that you have to get to, and the sooner the better. I told you to hold off till 2024. I've been saying that for the better part of a year. 2023 was not the time for presidential choosing. 2024 is. And the people clearly spoke in Iowa. And I believe the door will be shut for all other contenders outside of Trump long before Super Tuesday, and certainly by South Carolina. 518, some of your thoughts on these matters. The Drive, we're wide open on the phone line, 615-737-9986. Marie is first up in Nashville. Marie, thank you for your call. Welcome to The Drive. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, Marie.
Yeah, I love your show.
Thank you.
I just have to say that your Matt and Chris is high level, and you're all top notch. What a class act all of you are.
Yeah, you're very kind, Marie. Thank you.
With that said, I just want to say a quick thing that with the Biden and the administration, we all right now just need to hang on and have faith that President Trump can win. And I believe that he will turn this country around. And in the meantime, yes, it is absolutely sinful what this administration is letting happen to the safety. I mean, they take an oath for the safety of all of us in the United States, and not one person in that administration has honored it. And it is a crime. But I think at this point, we have to just lay low, be patient, and let's wait and see what happens. But let's have faith that President Trump can turn it around. And I think this is going to be, he's right when he says make America great again, because I truly believe that he will. And that's all I have to say.
Marie, thank you for the call, and it's well spoken. We'll get to more calls coming up in just a few moments on The Drive with no Brian Wilson, Matt Murphy in for Brian. I'll reflect on what Marie just had to say. What frightens me, we don't live in a bubble here in our country regarding our politics. The Iranians know very well what's coming in November of 2024. They like where they are positioned now, certainly more so than when Donald Trump was in office. The Iranians had no access to the billions of dollars that the Biden administration gave them access to. They had no ability to funnel that money to fellow terrorist organizations like Hezbollah and the Houthis and others. We'll talk more about that and what could come between now and November elections, plus more of your calls on the way. It's 5:21, cold out there, and we'll reflect on the weather coming up in about 15 minutes as well with Dan Thomas. The Drive continues. No Brian Wilson, Matt in for Brian on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Watching the weather as more snow is expected this week in Middle Tennessee. A debate canceled in animal cruelty here in the Volunteer State. Those stories coming up 30 minutes after the hour at 5 o'clock. I'm Mac Morey on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Mr. Morey. Don't go anywhere. We've got another hat for you to put on here moments from now. 5:26, Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. Brian on the road today, traveling back from Iowa. He'll be back tomorrow, 3 o'clock. Come hook or crook, as my grandpa used to say. I'm with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Now, you regular listeners to The Drive with Brian Wilson, Chris Webber, Mac Morey back in the newsroom know that it's time to take off our news hats and to put on our sports gear. That's right. It's Mac Morey's wide, wide world of sports. I'm picturing, instead of the guy, I'm picturing Mrs. Beasley sliding through my backyard. Swoosh. She was so desperate for a ball this morning, and I threw the ball, and she ran underneath it, and the ball fell, and it just went into the snow. And she's like,
"Where'd it go?"
And they can't smell them.
Yeah.
Where the hell did it go? So that's that's our sporting moment for the morning. Okay, Mac Morey, what's going on in the world of sports, friend?
Man, a wild NFL weekend. A little underwhelming, though. Wild card, they were calling it Super Wild Card Weekend, which, I don't subscribe to. It's Wild Card Weekend. It's like you with Friday Eve. You just don't subscribe to. That's fair. Super Wild Card Weekend, no. It's just Wild Card Weekend. But
we'll decide whether it's super or not, right?
Really. And
I'll decide that.
Exactly. And from my vantage point, it was not super because he had 6 games. I mean, 5 of these were blowouts. 5 of these were not good games. There was one awesome game, the LA Rams at the Detroit Lions. It had the most storylines going into it. You've got, Jared Goff over with Detroit, who used to play with the LA Rams. He went to a Super Bowl with Sean McVay. And then you've got Matthew Stafford. He played with the Lions for 10 years. He couldn't ever bring them to the playoffs. He's so fantastic. He went and got himself a ring with the Rams. I mean, just so many storylines here. The Detroit Lions haven't won a playoff game in 30-something years. They did it. It was a 1-point finish. What a show it was. It was fantastic. It was a great game. And it is exactly what you wanted to. Because, even though if you like Stafford, you like the Rams, that's great. But it's always fun to see kind of a blue-collar sports city get that moment. And the Lions got it. And there were, their dudes crying in the stands. So I can totally sympathize with that. I love that sort of passion. So it was good to see them get that playoff win. Loved that. But other than that, man, I mean, you've got the Cowboys. What a clinic against the Packers. Yeah. Woo! We love that. We love that.
I love how everyone hates the Cowboys except for the people that love the Cowboys.
I know.
Well,
it's a January tradition at this point.
Say it again. Who won that game?
That's the Green Bay Packers. Wasn't even a game. I mean, it was over.
Stupid Cowboys.
Terrible.
Oh, it was awful. I love it.
The Browns get shellacked by the Texans. The Texans, similar storylines, not the exact same.
What
not
I tell
nearly
you,
the drought.
I texted Mac Morey. What did I text you, Mac Morey? Tell him. Tell the truth. What did I text you? What did I text you before that game?
Murphy before the game's like, I've got Cleveland taking over the AFC. Take them to the Super Bowl.
I had Cleveland in the AFC Championship game and probably winning it.
Yeah, exactly.
Missed by that much.
I would like to strike that from the record. Thank you.
45-14 was the final score there in Houston. The Buccaneers last night take over the defending Super Bowl title appearers, at least in the NFC. The Eagles 32-9. The Chiefs, they take care of business as usual in January at home against the Miami Dolphins. 26-7. So, yeah, really just not a lot of close matchups. Hopefully this weekend brings us more. I think this is the best weekend in the NFL football division.
As usual. Do you hear?
Yeah, always.
No big deal.
Just threw that in there.
Slip
As
that in.
usual.
As
You know what's not usual?
Oh,
the Chiefs on the road.
That's right.
In the playoffs with Patrick Mahomes behind center. You excited about that Bills contest?
I'm so excited. Finally, we get to be a road underdog of kind of a villain story. I mean, it's been since Patrick Mahomes' first year that he was like a underdog in the playoffs, really, against Tom Brady, the AFC Championship game then. But yeah, crazy to play 15 playoff games and never won on the road. That's how good he is.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm excited about this. And
it's going to be warmer in Buffalo than it was this past weekend in KC.
Yes. I think it's going to be 21 degrees right now is the forecast with the sun out. So, yeah, it'll be a breeze for those guys.
How about that game last night where every good thing the Bills did, they were throwing snowballs onto the field? It was so good.
Oh,
it was so wonderful to watch.
It was awesome.
I love watching football in the cold. Watching football from the confines of my home while people are freezing cold in that nasty weather. It's good stuff. Too bad the Chiefs are going to be out after next week, but they did pretty good so far.
I feel good about it, man. Hey, everyone's counting us out. I love this.
You should love me being on the Bills, considering my Browns selection.
That's true. Yeah.
I did. I was so proud of my tech.
So
I was like, dude, you heard it here.
You heard it here.
The Browns are going to the AFC Championship game. And I think they got a good chance of what happened? What? CJ who?
Score was what now?
What? Where did that guy come from? He's a rook.
Yeah, he's
man.
incredible. I think this is the best rookie quarterback season we've ever seen in the NFL. That's my take. Been saying that since week 3, by the way, on the Behind the Box Score podcast. Find us weekly.
Finally, before you put your news hat back on, any movement on the coaching front for the Tennessee Titans? No?
Just interviews right now. Yeah, no huge movement. Honestly, there really wasn't even big announcements over the weekend on interviewing different names. I think they have 7 or 8 interviews so far, but yeah, nothing out of the ordinary. No Harbaugh drops or Bill Belichick name drops. Nothing like that. So I'm waiting on it. I'll let you know.
Yep, we will see. There is the wide world of sports with Mac Morey. He'll put that news hat on at 5:32 and get into the news headlines that you need to know about. Don't forget, coming up, Dan Thomas will tell us what is going down in the weather over the next several days. That's on the way on The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.532, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Currently 18 degrees right now in Nashville, and Metro Police cite drivers heeding advice to travel only if necessary. It is now paying off. There were just 10 crashes reported during the morning rush, 9 non-injury crashes. There was one with an injury. Metro Police say while conditions on interstates are improving, those neighborhoods, side streets, back roads, those remain snow-covered and slick. We got a full weather forecast, latest traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. This week's scheduled New Hampshire Republican debate has been canceled. The reason wasn't the weather, it was the candidates. Here's Andy Field.
ABC News and WMUR TV were set to host this Thursday's New Hampshire Republican debate until all but one of the candidates said they wouldn't be there. Only Ron DeSantis agreed to show up. Nikki Haley is far ahead of the Florida governor in that state's polling and is doing what Donald Trump's done for every debate this race, deciding it was not worth her time with her large lead. Nikki Haley saying she would only debate if Mr. Trump was there, and he's declined again.
Crime right now in Tennessee. An Aaron, Tennessee homeowner facing animal cruelty charges after officials found multiple dogs left without food, any water, or proper shelter. The owner now faces 8 counts of animal cruelty after surrendering the animals, many of those dogs puppies. And according to Aaron police, those dogs now with Proverbs 12:10 animal rescue. They'll receive some vet care, and then they'll be placed up for adoption. That's the latest news. Weather, traffic report next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
It is The Drive. No Brian Wilson, Matt Murphy. And for Brian, normally you hear me from noon until 3 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I am pleased to be with you in drive time, trying to get you home in a safe and proper fashion. And if you're out on the roadways, it is still a little bit treacherous out there. Wherever there is ice and snow, well, it's ice and snow. But don't let me tell you. Let's let Dan Thomas tell us from WSMV. He joins us to talk about the icy conditions, the snowy conditions, and what we can expect over the next couple of days. Man, oh, man, you have been working that took us off, Dan, and I appreciate everything you're doing over at Channel 4. It's been great watching you on television, keeping us safe and sound.
Thank you so much, Matt. Yeah, what a January. It's just been unbelievable. We call them first alert weather days here at WSMV4, and I think we've had probably 10 of them this calendar year, and this calendar year is 16 days old. So just unbelievable. You got to watch out tonight, as you mentioned. Now, it's really impressive what improvement we've seen on the interstates today compared with around this time last night in the last 24 hours. And so you see a lot of wide open areas on the interstates, but you still have to watch out for those on and off ramps. What I found is that the on ramps, you think you're going on an on ramp that you're used to, and you think you might have 1,000-foot little area that sort of merge, but then you realize as you get on, there's still quite a bit of snow there on the shoulder, so you have a much shorter distance to merge on. And I also noticed today we have varying road conditions where it may be wide open and nice and clear, and then all of a sudden you see a big old patch of snow 100 yards in front of you. So you have to stay vigilant at all times as you're driving around.
Well, I mean, obviously, the past weather is creating this dynamic by which we're seeing all of this cold weather and the conditions for driving and traveling or whatnot. And then we have what is expected over the next 48 hours. Walk us through what the next several days are going to be like. Particularly, let's start with whether or not we're going to see any melting and whether that's something we want to see in advance of this system coming in.
It just depends on what you're going for, but the kids obviously don't want to see melting because they want to stay out of school through Friday. But me myself, if I was slow to clear the front porch or something like that, yeah, I want to see that go away. And we've got sunshine tomorrow, so the sun today, it's January, but still the Tennessee sun in January makes a difference, and it will eat up on some of that snowpack, despite the fact that it's still below freezing. And so, and especially if you can get the snow off your walkway, your driveway, your front porch, and then let the sun hit it, you'll be surprised at what the sun can do. But tomorrow we get to freezing, and that'll be the first time in about 2.5 days. It's probably, I've lost track, but I think it's about probably 62 consecutive hours right now of at or below freezing weather in Nashville. Nowhere close to the record, but so, tomorrow afternoon we'll get to freezing. I think Thursday we get above freezing, probably 35 degrees. But along comes our next winter storm. And with that, moving in Thursday afternoon into Thursday night, it's a much weaker storm. I think it really develops east of here, so not as much moisture with it, but it's still going to bring a Tennessee mix. This is a typical Tennessee winter storm where we have some rain, some freezing rain, some sleet, some snow. Right now, the northern tier, northern middle Tennessee, southern Kentucky, looks to get the most snow and the most rain across the far southern tier. Interstate 40 is going to be very interesting. I think we flip and flop multiple times in this storm in terms of type of precipitation.
Is that worse in terms of the creation of ice when the temperature dips down below freezing again? Because if you start with wet and it turns over into something solid, is that more treacherous in your experience, Dan?
It definitely could. It just depends on the temperature profile. If you continue to get colder, definitely so. Right. But if you're going to hang around freezing, sometimes the road product, if you're around 30 degrees, can make the main thoroughfares just wet throughout. But we're going to get much colder. We've got another Arctic invasion coming up for first thing Friday morning. The wind will be howling Friday morning, so the air temperature is still in the teens as colder air builds in. I don't think the temperature climbs all that much on Friday, but because of the very strong north wind, the wind chill will be back around zero. So, when you have varying types of precipitation, you got to watch out also when you're driving. You can't get complacent. You can't say this road's fine, because then you can go on a bridge, or you could go a little farther north and have completely different road conditions. So we're going to just stay plugged in, ready to go, and just be ready to deal with more slick spots Thursday night, Friday, and even as we kick off the weekend on what's left behind.
All right, Dan, I know you got to go, but before you do, I want you to educate the audience with the drive in a way that you did for me last year. This is going to prove that I listen to you when you're on with me, Dan. You taught me about sublimation. We have experienced sublimation today, have we not?
Absolutely. Yes, sublimation, it's the opposite of something called vapor deposition. Sublimation is when we skip a phase and we go directly from a solid to a gas. And so it's amazing that can happen, but you could be 0 degrees and see ice cubes disappear in your freezer. Make some ice cubes and you'll see them in the tray if you have an old-fashioned tray, and then, just set them in a container and check on them in a year. And they'll be shrunken and more rounded off because some of that water, which was a solid, goes into the gas state. Well, the same thing happens outdoors with the snow. We go from snow and ice on the ground. All of a sudden, the snow just vanishes, and it's possible you've never gotten to freezing in the whole process.
Wow. Well, I watched it in my front yard, and I thought of Dan Thomas as I was watching it. Sublimation in action, I said to myself. Dan,
beautiful. You pay attention, Matt.
Well, I try to. We appreciate everything that you do. Thank you so much. We'll be watching you on the tube, and we appreciate the heads up in the next 48 hours. We can expect some more wet or freezing conditions. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Yep, my pleasure.
There's Dan Thomas with WSMV4 checking in with us. I knew he had to go. Obviously, he's in the midst of television forecasting as well. So nasty conditions will continue. Freezing conditions will continue. Gets about 30. And you can't possibly expect all this snow to go away in the time that it's going to be above freezing, for goodness sake. It's not like it's 80 or even 50. It's going to be 35. So you'll see some of that. What my fear is, because I'm old enough. This is sad. I'm of an age now where I just worry about falling down. That's about it. Are you at that age yet, Weber?
I guess not.
Yeah?
I think about it. I try not to.
How old's your child?
16.
And? Home? Having a good time?
Yeah, right now?
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Do you chase them around outside? Do you still do the outside things with the snowballs and all of that kind of thing?
No, he's over that.
Yeah. Oh, well, it happens. No snowmen in your house?
No,
or outside of your house?
I'm the only one that's been outside over the last 2 days. Not a joke.
What about you, Maury? You doing anything outside? You having a good time in it?
Yeah, mainly my dog, loves the snow. So that gives me the motivation. Yeah, she's all about it. So, yeah, I got to go or else I feel bad.
Yeah, Mrs. Beasley is allowed outside for about in 3-minute increments. And then Erica starts in on her feet are cold. Her feet are going to freeze. Her feet are going to get frostbite. I'm like, wouldn't she tell us?
She's a dog.
She's a dog. She's got pads on her.
Yeah, she's doing great.
Come on. Hey, Miss Beasley's having a good time. Get her up. Her feet are going to... And then she read... Earlier today, my wife went outside, picked the dog up, and carried the dog back inside.
The dog's like, what? Why?
What?
I'm having a good time.
Did the bell ring? For me. I didn't hear it. Anyway, so we can expect some nastiness over the next several days. More snow and ice coming up. But my fear... I've gotten to the point at 50 years old, my fear is that I'm going to fall down and break something. And maybe I'm a little early to that moment in my life, probably so. Maybe I shouldn't feel that way until I get to 60, but when the melting starts and then the refreeze happens, that means the snow's going to be there and it'll be crusty on top, but then below, that's an icy sheet below.
Deceiving.
And then you go through with the crunch, and the snow gives you that false sense of, hey, it's crunchy, it's going to hold me.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get to the bottom and woo, here we go.
You really, not to make you even more scared, but you really don't even have to wait for the thaw and then the refreeze, because if you just pack that snow tight enough, like vehicles driving on top of it, that's basically just
it becomes
ice.
The ice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think, it's white, it's snow, I won't fall. Nope.
So we've got in our backyard, we have a deck. There's a shop, my workshop, and then a sunroom. And between the two, there's a deck that's open. And so our goal today was to get all the snow off the deck. before it iced over, which we did. And so I said, well, while we're out and about, while I've got the shovel out and I've got the broom, I've got a big industrial shop broom that I was using to push things around. Why don't I just go do the front driveway?
Yeah.
And I got about 4 foot square of that done. I was like, to hell with this. This is awful. This is awful.
Really?
I mean, yeah, it was
I shoveled mine yesterday and today.
You've got a big shovel, though, don't you?
I've got a snow shovel.
You have a snow shovel, an appropriately sized snow shovel. You know what Melba Toast is packing over here? My shovel's like that one. It is ridiculous.
Little garden.
I have a garden. That's what I have. I've got a squared off garden shovel that I use to scoop poop in the backyard. I'm scooping snow in it's about a 12-inch zone per pass. Oh, I feel
got a neighbor with a snowblower, just like jump.
I was wondering. I'm going to try this tomorrow morning, and I might video it. I want to know what happens if I put the big backpack leaf blower on.
Yeah. Well, well, tomorrow it might not because it did get a little warmer today, but yesterday morning or yesterday afternoon, you probably could have blown it easily because it was so cold and dry. Yeah.
I don't know anything about snow skiing, but the wife tells me that this was snow skiing snow. Is that correct?
This was pow pow, baby.
Yeah,
yes.
nice.
Wait, pow pow? What is that? Is that what the kids are calling it these days?
That's what they say, bro. It's gnarly.
The pow pow's popping, babe. Yeah. So you want a powdery substance. You don't want that wet, slushy stuff. I could make a snowball with it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's what you
Very
want.
fluffy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. More snow to come, and that's what we want, right? I mean, I like Four Seasons. I'm all about it. It's 5:50. In a moment, Nikki Haley. Look, I'm not a fan of Nikki Haley's based on political ideology and based on priorities for what would be her presidency. Frankly, I don't like her foreign policy. It is a non-starter for me when it comes to Nikki Haley and her foreign policy. But the American people, specifically Republicans in America, I think they've spoken loud and clear above and beyond her war hawk stance on foreign policy issues. They don't like the idea of a Nikki Haley presidency, and I think this is because she's kind of an inside-the-beltway politician. You know, I understand that she's not been there as long as some, but she presents herself as very much a bureaucratic Republican. But she also doesn't know how to keep her feet out of her mouth. I'll give you the latest as presented on Fox and Friends this morning with Nikki Haley and racism when we return on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It is 6 o'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 14 degrees in Music City. TDOT still recommending people to stay off of the roads if at all possible. Temperature set to stay frigid as well. Wind chill advisory in effect. Channel 4's Lisa Spencer lets us know the details of that advisory.
This is going to be in effect through tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And of course, the travel conditions are still going to remain very hazardous out there. The roads are slick, they're icy. Now, the main thoroughfares are getting better, but still, there's some tough traveling on some of those secondary roads. Single-digit lows and sub-zero wind chills is what we're talking about in this forecast. And this is our wind chill advisory, the blue representing that advisory area. Everybody here in the mid-state, we're talking temperatures that are going to feel like 5 below to 15 below.
Forecast, latest traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. White House National Security Council official John Kirby describes the recent retaliatory strikes from the Houthis in the Red Sea as lower-scale attacks that have been ineffective. Karen Travers.
Asked Tuesday by ABC if the continued attacks in the Red Sea by the Houthis mean U.S.-led strikes last week did not significantly degrade the rebels' military capabilities, President Biden's national security spokesman John Kirby said,
even before we conducted these strikes, we had every expectation that the Houthis would still maintain some capability and would probably retaliate in some form or fashion.
Kirby said the strikes were designed to, quote, degrade and disrupt the Houthis' military activity. And he said the U.S. strikes will continue if the Houthis keep conducting their attacks.
Some crime in Tennessee. A woman was run over and killed by her own car. This happened on Sunday. 69-year-old Catherine Hannon was found underneath of her Lexus SUV behind the driveway of her home on Savannah Ridge Drive in Murfreesboro. Officials now waiting for a full autopsy report to determine a cause of death. They do believe that it was an accident. And half a day after winning the Iowa caucus, former President Donald Trump inside of a New York City courtroom for the penalty phase of a civil defamation trial involving E. Jean Carroll. A jury now seated, the panel only deciding what Trump should pay the writer for comments about her that he made while being the president. The trial not expected to take too long. Olivia Rubin gives us more from outside the courthouse.
Alina Habba, Donald Trump's attorney, was asked how long she would need to present her case, and she said maybe a day and a half. They are still planning on having Donald Trump testify, as far as we could tell by what Alina said in court. And then they have just one other witness that they are going to be putting on the stand. And as far as E. Jean Carroll's case, her attorney said that they would need no more than two and a half days for their own case.
And that is the latest news. Weather and traffic next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
It is indeed The Drive. No Brian Wilson today. Brian on his way back from Iowa. The caucus complete. He'll be back tomorrow in the saddle. Matt Murphy in for Brian. Normally you hear me from noon until 3. If you're unable to listen, work obligations and whatnot, I strongly recommend you quit that job and get another one so you can listen to me from noon until 3.
Just makes sense.
I mean, it makes sense to me. Would be good for me, hopefully good for you. 608, there's the voice of Chris Webber. He's behind the glass, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as possible. Mac Morey's back in the news closet. I was going to ask, I don't guess I can. He's busy doing news duties. I was going to ask several super texters on the super text line, 615-737-9986, wanted me to ask about Patrick Mahomes' cracked helmet. Maybe later. Apparently he cracked a helmet during the game. I was unaware.
Yeah, he took quite a lick. And
clocked him in his helmet.
Big hole in the top of the helmet there.
I saw the aftermath when he was trying to figure out that was a backup helmet, I guess. Where
yeah,
he kept
it didn't fit right, he said.
Kept fiddling with it. But none of his helmets look like they fit right.
He wears that new style helmet that almost looks like Gazoo from the Flintstones.
Oh, you bubbling boobies. Yes, that guy.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. That was when the Flintstones jumped the shark, as they say, right?
Yeah, it was kind of where they started the crossover with the Jetsons and stuff
yeah,
like
it was
that,
modern Stone Age family. Anyway, no questions on the Patrick Mahomes helmet. Then we'll leave that for another time. We did ask you a question regarding the Iowa caucus. Does this settle it for you? And I'm taking your calls on that matter. 615-737-9986. And we have now officially, at least I have now officially nicknamed Nikki Haley Nikki Bobby, because if you ain't first, you're last. And Nikki Haley says that in a race where she finished third, it is now a two-person race. In a race that she finished third, it's a two-horse race. Now, she tried to clarify those remarks today, saying that, you look at Ron DeSantis in New Hampshire. I'm not worried about Ron DeSantis in New Hampshire. I'm not worried about Ron DeSantis in South Carolina. Do you think Donald Trump's worried about you, ma'am, in either of those states? I don't think so. In your home state, the people who know you best have you 30 points down. You're managing about a 21% vote, according to the latest Real Clear Politics polling data that I've seen. 21%. Donald Trump is getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% in your own state, ma'am. In your own state. It is Al Gore-ish to suggest that you can't secure your own state. And I don't believe you will. And I believe by South Carolina, I guess that's February 24 now on the Republican primary calendar. I believe by that day, around a month or so from now, a month and a week from now, all of this will be put to bed, and we won't have to listen to you open your mouth and insert your foot, as you did this morning on Fox and Friends. Now, I have no interest relitigating the United States of America's history with regard to racism. I don't. But when you hand nuggets to the mainstream press along these lines, you're demonstrating to me that perhaps it's not your time and you're not ready. What am I talking about? From this morning's Fox and Friends on Fox News, Brian Kilmeade interviewing Nikki Haley.
Are you a racist party? Are you involved in a racist party?
No. We're not a racist country, Brian. We've never been a racist country. Our goal is to make sure that today is better than yesterday. Are we perfect? No. But our goal is to always make sure we try and be more perfect every day that we can.
Okay, so Nikki Haley says we're not a racist country. I would agree with that. She says that our focus is to make our country the best that we can be. I agree with that. Political leftists attempt to redefine our history regularly, especially when it comes to the Democrats being the party of racism and the party of slavery. That said, she said we've never been a racist country. And look, I'm not here to relitigate it. I'm here to tell you, you cannot hand nuggets like this to the liberal press and expect to win over voters that aren't paying that much attention and don't have the good sense to be able to dig a little bit deeper and get to the certain complexity as to exactly what you're talking about. To suggest we've never been a racist country, I mean, look, I love our country, and I believe that our country is great. I believe that our country is exceptional, and we still cling to that city on a hill concept that Ronald Reagan so eloquently talked about in the late 1970s and the early 1980s and through his presidency. But, yeah, I mean, we went through the same things that so many different nations and every part of the world has been through with regard to racism and bigotry. At the formulation of our country, there was a robust debate as to how to classify slaves with regard to population counts. And eventually we determined that a slave would be considered 3/5 of a person. It is hard to argue that at points in our country's history we were not institutionalizing racism when we had slavery as an institution. Nikki Haley finds herself having to talk her way out of these moments because she talks her way into these moments. Well, Nikki Bobby, it won't be much longer with all of this because if you ain't first, you're last. Roger is next up in Westmoreland. Roger, thank you for the call. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, sir. You?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
Well, first off, you said something about earlier about falling at 50. If you fall, you might not break nothing, but you'll know it the next day.
Wait, say that again, Roger.
I said you was talking earlier about falling at 50. I said you might not break anything, but you'll know it the next day.
Well, I'm feeling it right now in my upper shoulders after all the shoveling I did this morning.
No, what I called about is I think, or see if you dudes also, do you think that Haley and DeSantis is staying in case Trump is ineligible to run as far as all the lawsuits and stuff going against him if they was to find him guilty on something?
Yeah, it might be a part of their calculus. I mean, some are suggesting that Vivek Ramaswamy only, quote-unquote, suspended his presidential campaign because if you suspend your campaign, you can unsuspend your campaign should certain things fall into place and Donald Trump is found guilty or whatnot. I don't believe that any of those cases are going to be fully adjudicated until well past the presidential election in November. And certainly, if I know that, I mean, I look at a calendar and I see, even if you get to the court, even if you get to a decision within the court, you still have the appellate process that can be drug out for years. And it's Donald Trump and his team get to determine the timing of all of these cases. It's only one individual that's entitled to a speedy trial, and that's the defendant. That's Donald Trump. So surely they have this analysis in their back pocket as well. So I don't think they're dragging it out. I think, when you run for president, Roger, there has to be a certain level of narcissism going on, right? I mean, you think a lot of yourself, right? And these folks
I think so, yeah.
And these folks have surrounded themselves with people that have explained to them how they can still win. And even though it's pretty obvious for most of us, the writing on the wall and who's going to be the nominee, they are clinging to that belief. Vivek Ramaswamy decided to suspend last night. I expect that after South Carolina, one or both of the other candidates will suspend their campaigns as well.
Yeah, I would think if Haley doesn't do good, especially in South Carolina, she was suspended.
Yeah, I mean, and, I'll tell you, it's Ron DeSantis that is going to look foolish over the next couple of primaries. And thank you for the call, Roger. Ron DeSantis may get beaten by Chris Christie in New Hampshire. And Chris Christie is no longer in the race. The latest polling data I had out of New Hampshire had Chris Christie at 11%. Now, understand many of these polls were taken in the days leading up to his decision to suspend his presidential campaign. But Nikki Haley could be the beneficiary of Chris Christie leaving the race. It's hard for me to believe, just if I put on my analysis hat for a moment, it's hard for me to believe that many, if any, of Chris Christie's votes are going over to Donald Trump. Chris Christie's entire campaign was an anti-Trump political screed. That said, if those go anywhere, they're probably most likely to go to Nikki Haley, who is looked at as something of a bureaucratic squish amongst conservatives. Nikki Haley, very broadly, is looked at as a bureaucrat's politician, okay? She's a D.C. politician. Ron DeSantis is kind of a politician's politician. I don't know what has happened to Ron DeSantis. I still like him from an ideological perspective. I think he's done a fabulous job in Florida. For whatever reason, the white-hot spotlight of the national presidential stage hit him, and he turned into a weirdo robot. I mean, anybody else? I mean, he's just a weird guy, and he's wearing lift boots, and he is nerdy in a way that reminds you a little bit of Jeb Bush, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not knocking the guy. I don't want to turn him into an enemy. I don't think he's America's enemy. The dynamic of presidential politics has completely changed, especially amongst conservatives or Republicans, and those are two different things, since Donald Trump. There is an expectation of openness and honesty, and many of the people that came to the table, maybe even for the first time in 2016, have a full expectation that you're going to act like a human being. And presidential politicians don't act like human beings oftentimes. Ron DeSantis is an example of that. He acts like a machine. There's a great scene in, I want to say it's Parks and Rec. I'm a fan of Parks and Rec, where their congressman comes by. And I refer to this oftentimes when I watch Ron DeSantis act, because this congressman comes by and he's walking through the room and he's shaking it. Hello, I'm Congressman Johnson. So good to see you. Oh, it's lovely to be here. Oh, absolutely. I would love to do that later on today. Thank you for inviting me. And then they take him into a boardroom and they say, hey, we've got about 5 minutes before our next get-together. Okay, 10-4, I'll hang out here. And he sits down and he puts his hands on the table and he smiles and he just sits there. And they're looking into the boardroom and like, what's he doing? He goes, oh, he's just resting. And he's just sitting there like a machine. That's Ron DeSantis. That's Ron DeSantis. There's nothing that he believes in that I can't be on the same page with, for the most part. There's just something plastic about him. And I think that's highlighted to a certain degree because Trump is so natural. He is so raw. And we've learned to kind of take that rawness as a compliment to his honesty and openness. And so when we don't get it, we're like, oh, what's this guy hiding? He's plastic. He's like a corporate type. So you've got DeSantis, who acts like the politician's politician. Nikki Haley, Nikki Bobby, she's the bureaucrat's politician. Vivek Ramaswamy was kind of Trump light. And why would we choose Trump light when we got the real thing right there in front of us? Adam will get to you in a moment, 621. Plus, we'll get to this incredible story. The Supreme Court has declined to take up a case involving gendered bathrooms. I have a solution for public bathrooms. I'll tell you what that solution is coming up in just a moment on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you, Mr. Maury. It is 6:26, almost 6:27. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Weber, it's official. You see what I had to do there during the break?
Oh, that's sad.
I feel so cold and alone.
Are you going to be able to make it the next 35 minutes?
I don't know. My laptop has officially gone kaput.
Will you learn your lesson?
Yes, I guess I have to slip the old. If I'm going to keep the Fox News side, I think it was the Fox News pages that I had opened up to stories that I wanted to cover. I think they were sucking the life out of my battery. So yes, I've learned my lesson. Keep my charger handy with me at all times, particularly if I'm doing the extra hour on the drive.
Yeah, maybe you just get yourself an additional charger and just always have it in your bag.
You should buy that for me for like my birthday or something.
I could do that, couldn't I?
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Or
we won't though.
Or not. This doesn't surprise me, and I'm not knocking on the super texter who wrote me this. I'm not even going to use the last 4 digits of their number because I don't want to make this about them. But I got a couple of these. I'm just going to read one. Actually, we've never been a racist country. There have been some states and some groups that have been racist, but overall, that's not what the U.S. has ever stood for. I love the United States of America. The United States of America is the greatest bastion of freedom and liberty on planet Earth. We are the finest country ever devised by men. Our form of government, what was the old Churchill quote? Our form of government is awful and it's rife with problems and loopholes and nonsense, but you know what? It's better than anything else. So understand that I believe that when I tell you that it is an undeniable fact that we institutionalized a system in our nation that is inherently racist. I mean, in order for slavery to be institutionalized in the United States of America, you had to have a belief that one race of people had dominion over another. And the foundational definition of racism is the belief in the inherent superiority of one race or group of people over another race or group of people. So I understand that it might smart a little bit to recognize that. I don't wallow in it. I mean, this ain't the 1619 Project, folks. And I think those wallowing in it are doing so intentionally to try to take political advantage of what's going on in 2024. They want to excuse the lack of border security. They want to excuse so much of what is going on. And they use it. Many people and many organizations use race and the accusation of racism as a bludgeon nowadays. It's wrong. And I don't excuse that, and I don't play by those rules. I don't accept those premises. But Nikki Haley said, we've never been a yeah, I mean, a country that has institutionalized slavery is by definition, by modern definition, racist in its nature. We repaired that original sin long, long time ago. And it's way time to move on is how I would have answered that question. We're moving on to the news right now, and we've got your calls on the way with Adam first up. Plus, I've promised for a while that I'm going to get into the story about bathrooms, and we'll do it next on Super Talk.
women's sports.
It is The Drive, Super Talk 99.7 WT, and I've enjoyed it. Hope you have as well this Tuesday edition. Matt Murphy and for Brian Wilson. Normally, you find me from noon until 3 on Super Talk 99.7 WT, and it's my episode 492 with you. Brian Wilson back tomorrow. All right, let's finish this thing off the right way. The U.S. Supreme Court yesterday, surprising that the U.S. Supreme Court would offer a ruling on MLK Day, but okay. The U.S. Supreme Court yesterday rejected an Indiana public school district's request to defend a policy that restricted bathroom access by sex. The justices declined to hear an appeal by the Metro School District of Martinsville after a lower court ruled that a middle school's policy, which barred transgender students from using facilities like bathrooms or locker rooms, violated students' constitutional rights and ran afoul of federal anti-discrimination law. Attorneys for the school district asked the court to preserve the autonomy of the school board to make decisions. A 2023 ruling by the Chicago-based 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals said a student identified in court papers as AC is protected under the law called Title IX, which bars sex discrimination in education, and by the Constitution's 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court did not issue comment in the decision. The High Court has, over the last several years, dodged certain cases involving transgender rights. You know, it is often the case, it's been my experience, just to back this up to 50,000 feet, then we'll get down to the goats where they can graze on it. The courts want things traditionally, the United States Supreme Court, and it's frustrating as all get out to people who want resolution right now, today, right now, today. The courts have traditionally offered an opportunity. They could give a rip about public sentiment about matters in a perfect world. Now, I know that the individual justices are not immune from seeing what that public sentiment might be. But in a perfect world, they're immune from all of that public display of emotion. They're immune from the polls and what they have to say about this matter or the other. And oftentimes it is the case that the United States Supreme Court waits and allows the public to attempt. They give you an opportunity and us an opportunity and the legislatures of the individual states and the Congress of the United States a chance to work this out on our own. It's like, it's like parents allowing their kids an opportunity to figure something out on their own. Give them a chance. They'll figure it out. We're not going to let them kill themselves. We're not going to allow them to poke the fork in the electrical socket. But they'll figure it out. Give them a shot at it. And when they can't, maybe we'll weigh in. The courts have been loath to act early on cases like this. However, that said, it's high time that we had some resolution to some of this nonsense. Because the minuscule few want to dictate to the rest of us how we live our daily lives and impact not just ourselves, but our children or our grandchildren. I do not have any kids. I cannot imagine what my reaction would be if my 12-year-old daughter came home and told me that a boy came in to go to the bathroom in her school's bathroom. I would immediately, I assume I would respond by calling her teacher or calling a principal or setting up an appointment by which I go to school and I say, hey, this happened. This can't happen, right? Add to that the idea that it was institutionalized in the school. Now, sadly, we're about to come to a point where public bathrooms are going to become single-stall bathrooms. That's what I think's about to happen, where you'll have I think this is happening sooner rather than later, where business is like water. Business is going to take the path of least resistance, not to draw a line in the sand on any political issue, but simply to appease to the maximum amount of customers they possibly can without drawing a line in the sand against any other customer base. And so what I expect businesses will begin doing, they'll have a common bathroom, but you ever been to a Buc-ee's? That's what I'm talking about. Buc-ee's could be unisex. I mean, it really could. I mean, if you take out, I've only been to the men's side of things. I assume that there are not urinals on the woman's side. Okay? I'm just going to make that safe assumption. But a Buc-ee's bathroom, if you just had the stalls, they could be unisex. I mean, why don't we just do it that way? Now, the reason you don't is because society should not change everything about our society because of a minuscule few people that are demanding their quote-unquote rights. When they could easily solve this themselves by just look. This is as simple as it gets, okay? whatever you identify as, whatever you want to be, whatever you want to be referred to, you know what? That's all on you and your individual peer group or whatever. I don't care. Go let your freak flag fly for all I care. But when it comes to determining which bathroom you think you should go in, if you're at all confused, just take a look down. Just look down. If there's danglies, go to the men's room. If there's not, go to the women's room. That's it. That's it. Pretty simple. A spokesperson for the Indiana Attorney General, Todd Rokita, who supported the school district's lawsuit, criticized the Supreme Court for refusing to weigh in. The Supreme Court did not take the necessary opportunity to provide clarity, particularly with such a split amongst the appellate's courts on this issue. Makes little sense for SCOTUS not to resolve the matter at the federal level. I would tend to agree on that. Also, coming up today, President Biden's climate czar, John Kerry, was confronted in Switzerland, where he is attending yet another WEF event. That's the World Economic Forum, the summit, which focuses largely on environmental issues like climate change and achieving net zero emissions. Added that he has done a huge amount to combat climate change as the climate change czar. However, some in the assembled press were not very impressed with John Kerry's appearance at the World Economic Summit. Listen to this raw footage as several of John Kerry's goons pounce on this reporter for having the audacity to ask him a question about his carbon footprint.
What's the carbon footprint of these events every single year that you come here? Think it's worth it? Peasants pay for your crimes?
That's a stupid question.
Is it?
That's a stupid question. Yeah.
Is it really? Is it more stupid than you traveling here to tell us?
At this point, they're trying to push the reporter away.
We're done. We are done now.
Don't grab me.
The woman grabbed him and pushed him away. He's like, you can't grab me.
You can't grab us. This is a free society, mate. We have free.
By the way, I love this guy's accent. I'm on record. I love the Australian/New Zealand accent. You can't grab me, mate. It's a free society here. We're living in a free society. You can't grab folks.
Freedom of the press. Why do you think you're more important? Your carbon footprint doesn't matter, but everybody else around the world
suggested that. Nobody ever suggested that. Don't make up stupid questions.
Being here suggests that.
A stupid question.
You being here every single year and doing this suggests that.
And I have done a huge amount.
Listen, now it's finished, please.
Why can't I ask him questions? Please. Who are you? Why are you trying to bully me out of us?
So please.
That doesn't. A lot of people say no to a lot of the policies and agendas here.
Who are you, mate? Why are you pushing? Is a woman, by the way. He's called. I mean, I get. Is mate unisex? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it is.
I think so too. I treat guys as a unisex term, and maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah, I've done that as well.
Yeah, like if there's a group of people, men and women, I'll say, "Hey guys, come over here." Yeah, and I mean, everybody, not just the males. Mate, you can't put. We live in a free society over here. You can't push me away, mate. And I'm not going to try to do the accent again because I'll lose it and I'll start talking in a weird way. So, Adam, you'll be last up before we have to say goodbye. Hello, Adam. What's on your mind regarding the presidential election, my friend?
Well, all right. So, first, we'll hit DeSantis. I think I agree with everything you said about DeSantis, but I think the reason he's quote-unquote plastic lately, especially lately, I think he's being overhandled. I think he looks at himself, and I do too, and he sees his accomplishments and his promises and the things that he's done, and he's really better at Trump at the way of governing. The duties of governing are different than the skills of governing are different than the skills of running for president, campaigning.
Agreed.
And
Sure.
Donald Trump is a master campaigner and marketer, but when it comes to governing, Donald has put some. He's done a terrible job of choosing people to serve under him.
I don't know. The Trump years were pretty good. I mean, absent the COVID year.
Oh, I just so you know, I mean, I love Trump. I think he's the best president of my lifetime. So that's where I'm coming from.
Well, but and I would agree. And sadly, we're out of time. I'm sorry, Adam, that we are. But call us back tomorrow during noon to 3. We can continue the conversation. I appreciate your thoughts today. I'm sorry that we did not get to Nikki Bobby in your analysis. Maybe we can do that at a later time. But we have to do this right now on the drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is 6:49. Winding it down for the drive on this Tuesday edition, January 16. It's been a lively one. I did not get to Rachel Maddow actually saying the quiet part out loud. She admitted that MSNBC suppresses positive coverage of Donald Trump. Said it last night. Said, we're not going to show you his speech because he lies. Well, then you're not really a media organization, are you? Can't handle the truth? I think you can't handle the truth. Brian Wilson delivers the truth as he returns tomorrow for the drive. I'm back in my normal position, noon until 3 for Chris Webber, Mac Morey, and the rest of the crew, Jack Womack included. Thank you for listening. Be safe out there. The treacherous conditions continue in and around Middle Tennessee. We're back tomorrow. Mark Levin's up next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So long, folks.